OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're very welcome along to Thursday's OTB AM. It is the day before the day here on the show. We're having a festive football look ahead. It is the Kenny Cunningham special. The former Ireland captain is here with me for the duration of the show between now and 10 a.m. We're also going to be talking to Mark Lawrenson about Liverpool a little bit later. Could Manchester United be signing Haaland next summer? The Manchester Evening News reporting that he is now their number one target, as he'll be available for around €75 million when his release clause kicks in at the end of the current campaign. He scored 76 goals in 74 games since joining Borussia Dortmund, and Ralph Rangnick may well hold the key to him being signed next year at Old Trafford. We'll be looking forward to all of the festive football and looking back at the games in the EFL Cup quarterfinals. We've got two tasty semis coming out. There's going to be Liverpool against Arsenal, and Antonio Conte will go back to Chelsea as Tottenham boss in the last four of the competition. Kenny, great to have you with us a couple of days before Christmas.
Great to be here, Will. Such exalted company.
I know. The night watchman is me this week, Kenny.
Both of us, me and you both.
Yeah, I've been kind of filling in on various different programmes and
polyfiller.
That's it.
I know what you mean.
And here we are. You and I get a chance to chat about football between now and 10 and chat about the Christmas as well.
Yeah, well, if there is a time to speak about football, I think this is the week off the back of the games last night, and particularly in terms of what's coming down the road. I mean, this Christmas week and New Year, for me, it's got to be the highlight of the footballing calendar. You wouldn't sense that listening to a few of the managers kind of this week. It's been very kind of downbeat and negative. I just wonder if that kind of translates to the players sometimes. I wouldn't like to hear that necessarily as a player. Hear the managers kind of whinging about the schedule and demands on the players and how potentially dangerous it is for me players, the amount of games coming up. Don't like to see that. I think generally managers should embrace the challenge, and that's what it is, of the games coming up in quick succession over the Christmas. We know there's an additional layer to that this year with the kind of COVID situation, but just embrace it, be as positive as you can. I think your players will feed off that. So I'd like to hear a couple of the more the high profile managers kind of buy into that a little bit more. Too much negativity for me this week listening to them, their comments in regards to the games over Christmas and New Year.
As a player, how did you find the festive period? Because the players now are going to face, I think it's 3 games between next Sunday and the 10-day period after that.
3 games in a week?
I know, yeah. Scary times, Kenny.
Dangerous, danger. I feel sorry. Generally, the players loved it, I have to admit. I'm sure that's still the case. I mean, I haven't been in the dressing room for some time, but I'd be surprised if that's changed. Enjoyed Christmas Day. Enjoyed getting out of the house Christmas morning. Probably not so much me, probably more so the lads with maybe young families, young kids and stuff. You know, I've been up since about 5 in the morning. Obviously must have been exciting enough getting up the young kids, but about 8 o'clock I think you've had enough, haven't you? Like madness in the house, so you're happy to get out to training.
So what time would you have trained at Christmas morning? Did you get it done early and get home for dinner then?
Yeah, but it would have been dependent, say, where you were playing Stephen's Day. If you had a home game Christmas Day, it would have been a case of pretty much in normal time and maybe get out a little bit earlier, so get back if you're having maybe an earlier dinner. A little bit different if you're travelling away. Maybe Stephen's Day, that might have been a case of come in, actually reporting in the afternoon, have the whole morning with the screaming kids like in the house pulling your hair out, and then reporting about lunchtime, have the session in the afternoon, and then maybe jump on the coach straight from that and go straight if it was an overnight game. So that might be a slight bit of a range for a few of the lads, like being away from the family maybe Christmas Day, but you don't know anything different, you know what I mean? It's what you're used to. Lads have grown up in the system, 15, 16 years of age, young pros and stuff. It's just part and parcel. You accept it, and you kind of, and by and large, the lads loved it. And just that kind of challenge, the game's coming ticking fast, where you're able to operate 100% to your maximum during that period. You might have been carrying a slight injury, a little bit of physical fatigue crept in. Yeah, absolutely. But that was the challenge, and there was a real satisfaction coming through that period. Say 3 games in whatever a week or whatever it was, coming out 6-7 points out of 9, wherever it was, and being really kind of stretched, even physically yourself, carrying an injury through, but you got through it and you had something tangible to show for it at the end of it, in terms of maybe you jumped 4 or 5 places up the table. Generally in my career going into the Christmas period, it was a case of looking over your shoulder, the relegation behind you. I was always on the periphery of the relegation for the majority of my career. So the motivation going into the Christmas New Year period was, back-to-back wins was always then can we go back-to-back? And the satisfaction of looking at the league table going into January and suddenly you jumped 5-6 places would give everybody a lift in. You would hope generate a bit of momentum for you going into the second half of the season.
And then, like, you usually had the FA Cup third round come just a couple of weeks after Christmas as well. Use that kind of first week of January. I know it's moved a little bit this year, but like usually if you play those 3 games, you've got the FA Cup then to look forward to. Like, it's an exciting period of the season.
Yeah, it is. I think that FA Cup thing, to be fair though, Will, I'm trying to think back to when I was finishing, that was on the wane a little bit. I wouldn't. It'd be a bit of a stretch now to say, oh, amazing coming out of the Christmas. Oh, we've got an FA Cup. This just can't get any better. Christmas coming again.
Relegation battle. Surely you look forward to the third round and say, right, at least I can put the league to one side.
Yeah, that was the case. It wasn't by the time I was finishing. Well, I must admit, they'd taken absolute batter in the FA Cup. Teams' priorities, obviously the Premier League in particular, in terms of where the focus was, in terms of league position, and that was obvious in terms of team selections, teams that managers were putting out. Not even the Premier League. I'd even suggest down to Championship, Division 1. I mean, it was the managers in those leagues were actually putting out, I wouldn't say soft 11s, like, you know what I mean, but under strength. The focus very much in terms of kind of the league fixtures. So I think that FA Cup for some time has taken somewhat of a battering, obviously, and I feel sorry for the lower league teams because they've been squeezed so much financially over the past couple of years. There's still a bit of a cash cow for them in terms of getting the big Premier League team, the TV rights, etc., and getting a bit of a run. I still think that applies to the smaller teams, so I wouldn't talk it down too much because of that, because I think it's a huge day for the lower clubs, and for me that's what it's all about now, the FA Cup. It's about those teams, Championship, Div 1, Div 2, and those even 1 or 2 teams come out non-league. It's all about them, so I'd like to see them do well and generate that type of revenue, because unfortunately they don't get enough drip kind of financially from the Premier League, and haven't done since for the last kind of 15-20 years, which is a shame. Like, you know what I mean, a lot of them have struggled as a result. So yeah, good luck to them when that FA Cup game comes around. But I sense a little bit for the Premier League teams, it's a sigh of relief just getting through that kind of Christmas New Year period. That FA Cup game comes around, I think it's almost like a bit of a rest period, and obviously utilise your squad again, young players as well for that FA Cup game when it comes around. It's a bit of an iconic date, I should say, the kind of January the 3rd. I take your point, but I think the perception's a little bit different, particularly for those kind of Premiership and kind of Premiership managers now. I think that's kind of changed a little bit. Yeah,
because the pity, like you were saying, it is a massive cash cow for teams further down the pyramid. Now that the replays are gone in the 3rd and 4th round, that's actually going to impact those clubs, because the dream would have been that you get a Premier League team or a top Championship team, bring them to your ground, or potentially get a draw away from home, bring them for a money spin in replay. That's not going to be gone. It's just one occasion now.
Yeah, it is, and there's an argument there. You get the big team, the big scalp to your place, you get a draw, you get a replay. That was big. Can we get a replay and take them back to Old Trafford, the Etihad, the Emirates, all of these St James big grounds, and you got your chip of the crowd which came, and obviously the TV rights as well. So yeah, I do have a little bit of sympathy. I think it's almost a case where you almost feel as if you'd feel you could manufacture a little bit going forward for the smaller teams, in terms of, I know it doesn't seem right even saying it, but even kind of manufacture the draw a little bit, where when the draw is made, the game is played at the bigger round. There is a kind of a guarantee of a live fixture and everything which entails in terms of the TV revenue. So you might have to manufacture. That's not ideal. That takes away from the sanctity of draw a little bit. Home draw against, and there's still, I think, that bit of nostalgia. You're probably a little bit the same in terms of those draws of yesteryear in the FA Cup, where the smaller teams were drawn at home, 6,000 capacity at Hereford or wherever it was, like, you know what I mean, and the big team coming, muddy pitch, the whole shebang, the TV cameras being there, like, you know what I mean, and yeah, you haven't got your share of a 40,000 crowd maybe at Old Trafford, but it's it's totally, the dynamic's totally different, and those kind of memories resonate and probably stick in your memory a little bit more, rather than maybe Hereford or wherever going to Old Trafford. 50, nobody remembers that, like, you know what I mean, but that home game at Hereford, mean, that'll live in the memory a lot longer. So, yeah, it's not ideal, and it's been a difficult one, I think, the FA Cup, generally speaking, for the last kind of 10, 15 years. But I think wherever we go with the competition going forward, I think it's always got to be, it's not what's good for the Premiership teams. And you've made the point there about there still will be, there'll be no replays, and that will still obviously the Premiership teams. But I think what has to drive the competition going forward is about the bond between those lower league teams and the FA Cup, and really what's kind of best for them. Because I think as long as that bond stays strong with the lower league clubs and the FA Cup, I think that it'll survive in some form or another going forward. I think you leave those decisions to the Premier League, and Premier League managers and the bigger Premier League clubs will find the FA Cup at some stage being tossed into the bin.
Were you surprised they stuck with two legs for these English League Cup semi-finals? Because they're two tasty games, like Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs. I was sure when the talks were on this week they put them to one leg.
Yeah, I think it was an obvious, I think that was fair. I think generally speaking, regardless of this year, I think I'd like to see it as a one-off game. Anyway, never been a massive fan. I think when that first leg comes around, it's a semi-final, first domestic competition, and if your team's in it, and there's some four good teams left in it this year, you're up and there's a little bit of a buzz there, but not quite if it was you're going to a game and it's a one-off. You knew when you're coming out of the ground in 2 hours, whether it be extra time or penalties, you're either going to be in a final or you're going to be out. That kind of heightens the expectation a little bit, that kind of nervous energy when you go into the ground. This game really matters. What happens in the next, hour and a half or whatever, you know what I mean? There's no going back. There's no second chance. Whereas with the two-legged, it's always that bit of a feeling. Even watching and even commentating on it, it's important in terms you want to get a lead, but ultimately it's all about to say it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Well, there's the weird rule in the English League Cup as well, where away goals count in extra time, but not until extra time in the second leg. I always thought that's bonkers.
Yeah, they've twiddled with those things, but I think the basic fundamental for me, having the second leg, where do you apply the away goals or whatever you do, is just kind of tinkering around the edges. For me, the fundamental of having the second leg, I suppose, is the competition. It's more exposure for the competition to a certain extent, maybe more of a cash cow revenue stream and all of that. I undertake that to an extent. But for the game, for the game itself, for me, I'd be getting far more excited about those semi-finals. A one-off knockout game under the lights, kind of it's a midweek game. That's generally not the case, is it?
10th, I think.
Exactly. Maybe that'll get tweaked again going forward. But I was a little bit surprised, like you said, in the current environment that we're in with the FA Cup replays getting pulled. It would have seemed that was an obvious one, and because there was so much noise the last kind of week and stuff from managers in terms of demands on the players going into the Christmas and New Year, you would have thought that was an easy kind of, that was, if anything was going to give, it probably would have been that, But no, it stays in place. So that's a huge amount, like you say. FA Cup, EFL, bish bash bosh, and then it keeps going, doesn't it? You've got a couple of free weekends at the end of January. I was looking at me football in Canada thinking, it's 2 free weekends there at the end of January, February. What's going on there? And I was
international
thinking,
break.
International break. But they could be. Then you got the World Club World Cup. Does that come up to start?
Chelsea are heading off to that. Yeah.
Chelsea before they're heading off to Qatar and that, and then potentially I think those two. They're talking about maybe if games are cancelled, then obviously a few of the teams have got games to catch up in. Maybe filling those weekends in. Maybe January getting special dispensation for that. Africans Nations Cup. So the footballing calendar now, it's difficult to have a conversation with people. You're top of the football calendar now, and it's literally like, whoa,
you wait till next year. 18 rounds of Premier League from the first week of August until mid-November. 1 week to prepare for the World Cup, and there's fixtures 6 days after the World Cup final.
Yeah, but even like the international calendar, Arsenal Wenger, I listened to the other day coming on, and they're pushing strong on this World Cup now every 2 years. That hasn't gone away. That sounded like a bit of a just dipping his toe in the water a couple of months ago, and that was first suggested, and people kind of like dismissed it, thinking, World Cup, that's not,
The thing is, no one wants this except for FIFA. But Gianni Infantino was saying, well, if we took a snap survey, I bet people will want it. Like, you've got UEFA against it, you've got the South American Federation against it, you've got the Players Representative Board who are against it. I don't know too many fans who want a World Cup every 2 years, because like it'll destroy the Euros, it'll destroy Copa America, it'll destroy so many of the traditional competitions if it happens. Philippe Auclair was saying like last night that the Stooges, I think was the line he used in UEFA, will be determined to try and push this through. And he was saying the sad thing about it is that Arsene Wenger has become a voice for this now, when everyone kind of respected Wenger as, you know, a great romantic in football, but here he is now pushing a World Cup every 2 years.
Yeah, but I listened to a point that he made, and I wouldn't be a fan of the World Cup. If I had to vote now, I'd vote it down. Don't get me wrong. But I thought he made a fair point in terms of, he said, look, it's all well and good for players and managers involved in the bigger European leagues, Premier League, Bundesliga, Serie A, etc. You got all the world's best players there. You're involved in Champions League football year, which is the biggest club competition around. Yes, you have your European Championship World Cup every 4 years, so that kind of suits. The domestic competitions are absolutely huge, aren't they? The major European competitions, that's where all the focus is, that's where the players want to be. So to a large extent, you know what I mean, there's enough there for them, like, you know, whereas you take it to Southeast Asia, you take it to North America, and to a small extent Africa and South America. He was saying the smaller countries there, with their only taste of big time football would be when the World Cup kind of rolls around. Not that it necessarily rolls around to their particular part of the world, but that's like huge for them. That's what they gravitate towards, the kind of World Cup. It only comes once every 4 years, you know what I mean? They don't have the Champions League like year in, year out, you know what I mean? They don't have their diet of that. So he was saying it's not just, you got to look beyond the kind of European competition, what we have over here, and take a bit of a snapshot what's happening around the world as well. Like, so I thought that was a reasonable enough comment, to be honest with us. I think we're so blinkered and so focused on our own football and what's best for us. We're talking about Premier League and FA Cup, and like, FA Cup's got to live because it's all about the Premier League. But likewise in Europe generally, like, I think we're a little probably self-obsessive about what's happening, like the domestic competition, Champions League, and you know how the European Champions and World Cup fits around that, like, you know. So maybe we have to take a step back and take a wider view of what's going on globally and what's best for the whole kind of football family. So I thought that was a reasonable point to make. Actually, I thought, you know, that's actually fair, but. Yeah, I must admit, I still wouldn't be. But aren't they talking about, you probably know better than me, you got your finger on the pulse, Will, as I know, if this was Owen, I'd be going straight over his head if he was in the sea. But isn't there some talk about, I read in dispatches, like the Nations Cup, maybe talk about...
South American teams are going to come into the Nations League from 4 years' time.
Yeah, so I'm guessing this is all horseplay, like you're talking about. Like, you know, Wenger threatens a World Cup every 2 years. You know, Serafin comes back. Well, we're going to invite the South Americans, like, but you just
it'll all be in Europe as well. Like, the big losers in this are the South American fans, because like all of their best players pretty much play in Europe. Yeah. So like, you're an Argentina fan, all your best players, and all you're Brazilian, all your best players are in Europe. They're now going to be playing against European teams in the Nations League, and you don't get to see them at home anymore.
But surely that's a step too far. I mean, the World Cup thing every 2 years. I mean, the parameters are still the same. Like, nothing fundamentally has changed there. It's just the time in between. But taking like South American teams out of South America and introduce them into a Nations Cup, a European Nations Cup competition, but that seems a stretch too far. I know people might make analogies, maybe rugby and stuff. I know the South African teams and club are coming up and stuff like that, but for me, in terms of football, seeing the South American teams come into kind of European competition, that's a little bit farcical now, to be honest with you.
It's the money spinner. Like, if you're Germany or you're Spain or you're England, it's tasty to get Brazil or say Argentina coming to Wembley.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah. So yeah, this is where we are.
That's where we are with the football calendar. If you want to watch more about Philippe Auclair and Graham Hunter from last night's OTB, you can do so on our YouTube channel, Off the Ball. You are watching OTB AM. It is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Here's what's coming up. Kenny and I are going to have a chat about Christmas now in a second, and the rest of the football news. We'll be taking a look at the back pages just after 8 o'clock. We will then be joined by Sam Luckhurst from the Manchester Evening News. He's their Manchester United correspondent, to talk about them being heavily linked now with Edison Cavani. It seems that Ralph Rangnick, who was involved in his move from Molde to Red Bull in Salzburg, could hold the key to Manchester United signing him next summer. But there's going to be a scramble from all the top European teams to sign Erling Haaland. We'll be talking to Mark Lawrenson about Liverpool and also the festive football around about 10 to 9 after we get an update in the sports news from Cathal Mullaney. So all that to look forward to still on the show. Kenny, we didn't get to talk properly about your Christmas. How are you set?
That happened yet.
Well, here's the thing, right? Last week you were in here and you were the most chill man I've ever seen. You came in, Owen was like, "Have you got the shopping done?" And you were like, "Just get a few vouchers, just get it done." Are you still at that state a week on?
The vouchers now have gone by the wayside because there's no guarantee. We spoke about chapters being in some financial difficulty, and I can't take the gamble on buying a few vouchers presented to somebody and suddenly them going to the wall first thing in the new year. I'd feel a bit guilty about that. So I've had to go into the shops. And take a few things off the rack. Unfortunately, I haven't done that for quite some time.
Well, you strike me as a man who will go to a shop and buy rather than going online to do it.
That wouldn't be an option to go. I mean, wouldn't even be on the agenda going online for obvious reasons. I'll go into the shops, I'll be honest with you, as long as I know I need to have a clear picture. A little bit like the night before the game. Now, the night before the game back in the day, I'd be very conscious in terms of who I'd be playing against the day after. So if I was playing kind of right back, say in my early days, be coming against up whatever left wing or wherever it might be, it might have been Giggs or one or two others. Some good. So I'll be very much focused in terms of, those little pictures in your head, right? Boom, boom, drop the shoulder. Don't fall for that one. He leans towards this and that and the other. So boom, boom. So rather than counting sheep, I'll be counting step overs.
Where's Ryan Giggs going to go?
And body swears. Wouldn't just be one Giggs. It'd be most left wingers, to be honest with you. So that'd be those little pictures. So shopping, to be fair now, it'd be the same thing. I need to know exactly what I was getting before I'd even think of stepping into the shop. Because once you get into that habit, once you step over the threshold into a shop, and you don't know what you're getting, you're dead, like, you know what I mean?
The salesperson's coming.
Yeah, you're like a kind of young gazelle in the fecky. You're taking a wrong turn. You've ended up, you've ended up this Serengeti, like, you know what I mean? You don't know where you're going. It's like those shop assistants, the equivalent of feck, Pride of Lines, like stalking you on the shop floor. You've no chance. You've nowhere to go.
Look, I know you've got a few quid. Like, you're a former professional footballer. Like, you can buy a few things.
Well, I'd be very conscious, even in terms of the shop assistants. Bless them. I know they got a job to do, but that's the last thing. I mean, I just book it like, and one of them comes over, like, I'd be an easy sell. So again, it's just position yourself. Even as you walk in the door, you're clocking for these shop assistants where they are, and you've literally got. You might as well put your clock on timer. 45 seconds. I've got to grab something off the rack, get up to the cashier and pay it.
This sounds like supermarket.
This is it. Before your rugby tackle by a shop, before you're heading out with about 8 bags under your arm. So I have been in there. I've got a couple of bits. Not much. That was done, but that was done early. I'm gone. I'm finished.
What's Christmas like in the Cunningham household then?
Well, the young fella now is at an age. He's if you understand what I'm saying,
at some point,
exactly. Like, but he's not very demanding. I've got to be honest with you, and just as well in his case.
Who knows what he was going to get in the supermarket sweep?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so yeah, so that there's not an issue. There's not an issue in that respect. I'm not big on I must admit, not big on the present thing, Will. I never really have been, like, I don't mind dishing a few out. I'm not in terms of as bad as that.
You're not a Grinch, like.
Yeah, but I'm not a big one for like receiving presents now. You know what I mean? I'd rather not, to be honest with you. I'll sling a few in the direction of a few other people, but no, that big obligation, isn't there? Just, when you open it up and I'm never going to wear that. Oh boy, Jesus, that's not going to see the light of day. And then there's the guilt. You know what I mean? You can't really pass it on. Can you really give it away?
Oh, I've seen friends do that this year. There was someone in Secret Santa who passed on a bottle of plop they got last year onto someone else. You're like, lads.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We don't need that pressure, do you? No. You don't need that pressure, and it is pressure, isn't it? Even thrown out. You don't, even if it's not being used, you feel as if someone actually paid money for that, and bit of an obligation that you feel bad about yourself, like, am I a bad person? Don't need it, Will, do you? Don't need the pressure, like.
Right, are you a lunchtime dinner man or later in the day then?
Oh, it's got to be later.
Right, okay.
Oh, you've got to be looking forward. You literally your stomach's got to be talking to you by the time you sit down and have your dinner. That's how I see it anyway. So now it'll be it's usually 4 o'clock. I think 4 o'clock's a good time.
Yeah.
Anything, I don't get the old anything between 1 and 2 o'clock. Oh, good luck. And then people are having breakfast, like having a fry up, like
I
8,
never,
9
get,
of them.
never get that. I heard as well about people who've like steak in the morning on Christmas. Why? You're going to have a massive meal later in the day.
Stay clear of it. Bit of fruit in the morning. That'll be it. Maybe get out and have a bit of a run. Just just get myself prepared, and then whoosh, just the big weight. No starter, goes without saying.
Oh, right, straight to the mains.
Late.
You carving the turkey yourself, or who does?
I can get involved if needed. I've done a couple of Christmas dinners. Will.
Right, go on. What's on the Kenny Christmas dinner then?
Nothing major. Well, there's a lot of pressure now. I've noticed the last kind of, I'd say, 5-10 years. Maybe it's the all the culinary programs on the.
See, everyone watches Gordon Ramsay online and stuff now as well, and it's like, here's how he puts the goose fat onto what he's having with his Christmas dinner. Next thing, everyone's an expert.
Yeah, so what sums it up for me, right, is the Brussels sprouts, right?
Okay, crosses in the bottom.
Back in the day, Brussels sprouts weren't even an issue. They weren't even a talking point, were they?
No.
It was a given. Tradition, but it was a given. But there's no conversation about the Brussels sprouts in terms of like preparation or anything. Your ma put them in the pot. So this is they got bunged into the pot. Maybe they got like chopped and diced a little. Maybe too. I wasn't involved in any of that. But they got put in the pot, kettle of boiling water, and literally you boil the arse out of them for about half an hour, and that was it.
To soften them as much as you possibly can.
Done, wasn't it? If in doubt, leave them on for another 10, 15 minutes if unsure.
Yeah.
Straight in a bowl on the table, done. And that was it. Whereas now it's like, you serve up Brussels sprouts, I think, to somebody nowadays in that fashion. I mean, that's unacceptable now,
they want
isn't
them
it?
seasoned, and they want something fancy happening around it.
Oh, absolutely. So I arrived somewhere a few years ago and I was thinking, what's going on here? It was like Brussels sprout, bacon, like chopped little pieces, fried bacon, kind of drizzled, very tasty.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but once you see that and you experience something like that, and people do, generally speaking, it's like a ripple effect. You know what I mean? Word gets out.
Did you copy
people start chattering about Brussels sprouts, and yeah, you got to top that. You have to top that the following year. So now I'm hearing about get your Brussels sprouts in the oven. You got to get your Brussels sprouts in the oven. Balsamic vinegar, bit of oil, bish bash bosh, off you go. See, once like a Pandora's box, isn't it?
See, I knew you were a big fan of the Bake Off, so I was thinking you're probably going to steal a few things along the way here. Like, are you going roasty potatoes, mashed, bit of both?
No, I think roasties are enough. Roasties are enough for me. Just the basics, really. Turkey, get the turkey right. And I haven't always got the turkey right. You talked about that duck fat. That was a big thing a few years ago. I was hearing a lot of that. So I went for it. I think what you don't do, and this mistake I've made, you don't trial and error on Christmas Day, do you? With these things.
You can't bring a badly cooked turkey out to the table.
See, there you go. There you go.
In the bin.
So I've got too excited previously, and the duck fat was a big thing. Lashed it on everything. Again, the turkey was like fucking watering can. It was like watering can of this turkey, potatoes, the whole lot, and it was too much. You know, it was too sickly, thick, sweet. Do you know what I mean? All the fat, it was too much. It spoiled it. So I think you have to be careful. You have to kind of, a week or two before maybe go through the whole process and just get it. I wouldn't be doing that myself, but yeah, a lot of pressure on the. I've sensed a bit of that on the person cooking. What about yourself? Have you been lured?
Yeah, see, I did a test run a few weeks ago because mates of mine, we had a Christmas dinner because we're probably not going to be able to meet up around Christmas. We kind of saw it was coming, right?
Right.
So I did the turkey, and what it was actually basically copied what most of the top chefs do now, which is I made a baste which was made out of butter, a little bit of garlic, got it in under the skin of the turkey. That's about as much as I did. Kind of basted along as we were cooking the turkey. It's a very relaxing process. If you go every 20 minutes, have a look and see where the turkey's at, put a bit of butter back on top. And
you need a bit of confidence though what you're doing. If it's not relaxing if you're like, you know what I mean?
Well, see, that's the thing. I wasn't too worried because it wasn't at least Christmas Day. You
don't strike me as the type, Will, to get overly stressed about most things, to be honest with you.
Not really, but I would have been devastated if it was Christmas Day and the turkey comes out wrong. It's like the one thing you had to do was cook the turkey because they were doing all the other bits and pieces on the dinner. So if it comes out nice, I tell you,
You cover the bloody thing. Do you know that drying? Do you cover it? Do you get the foil all over?
Only towards the end. Like you're meant to let it get a
last half an hour. That's definitely, there's a bit of that's not now wives.
No. Let it get a bit brown before that though, because like there's nothing worse than an anemic looking turkey coming out if you put the foil on.
You dress it. Do you get the strips, the rashes all over it? And
didn't quite go that far. To me now, that might be a 2022 plan to try and get a bit of bacon in. Because again, I was looking at Gordon Ramsay doing this, right? And so what he does is he chops the bacon up afterwards and he makes his gravy and stuff from that kind of runoff and from the bacon. It looked fabulous.
Class,
yeah, but like he has all the time to do it. I don't have that kind of time. I was happy the turkey came out and didn't kill anyone. That was good enough for me.
And nice. There is something about visually how it looks down on the table before you tuck in. You're right. You speak about the colour of the turkey when it's really roasted up, the skin of it, and it's presented on the table. And even like those Brussels sprouts, like with the little pieces of bacon or wherever you do with your carrots or however you know what I mean. Just visually how it looks. That kind of colour coordination, isn't it? Looks well even before you tuck in. It's nice just to assess it, isn't it, on the table before you
savour it a bit before it comes out. It's like it's a special day. We're having a special meal. See, look, I'm a bit like you. I was raised on nice, simple Christmas dinners along the way, functional as opposed to fancy. And slowly but surely, I'm adding just a little bit each time that I cook it. Because like I was used to going to the parents generally for dinner in recent years, and like they take care of most of it. Like you usually fall in half hungover from the school meetup on Christmas Eve. You just get up and you enjoy the Christmas dinner. Now I've started to do a bit myself. You're trying to learn how to carve the turkey properly and whatever else as well. First time I carved it, I made an absolute balls of it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a skill. The old carving of the turkey, right? That can get messy.
Thing to do.
That can get messy, can't it? Yeah. If you're not careful, it can get away from you.
Eventually, like you learn.
And it can set in a little bit.
And like if you have a table of people sitting in front of you and you're carving bits of turkey that are going everywhere and the plate's not going to look too appetising, again, you've ruined their Christmas day. So yeah, there is a slight amount of pressure now.
Now, would you be a turkey sandwich man later in the evening? Because I've never had a turkey sandwich in my life.
Really?
Yeah. So that's me. I'm pretty much done now.
Do you buy just enough turkey for dinner then?
Oh no. Generally, it's a 3-day turkey.
Okay.
So and funny enough, I enjoy the turkey Stephen's Day, the second day, more than Christmas Day. Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cold turkey, but the cold turkey, cold stuffing, and the gravy on that. For me, why is that then? What do you think that is?
I reckon because it's just kind of had a bit of time to rest since you've cooked it the day before, and I think you just about have the hunger for a bit more turkey at that point. Like we always did turkey sandwiches like Christmas Day evening. Like when you go to watch a film or something in the evening, it's like just before you go to bed, you have a few after eights or whatever and a turkey sandwich.
Oh yeah,
I'm much
after eights all day. Yeah. No, I've never gone into the turkey sandwich because 4 o'clock 5 o'clock, always a dessert, nice little, although not the traditional. All of that muck, all of that Christmas.
Go on, what's muck then? Like Christmas pudding and stuff.
That Christmas pudding, that's just muck. Like that's not it's not even. Doesn't even constitute dessert. To me, like.
See, tradition's good in some ways.
Cooking that thing for about 4 hours and I've had to do that for other people. Like, you know what I mean? Really, is it worth it? Is it?
I don't know. Like one of my neighbours is industrial in their creation of the puddings. So I think around the summer they start doing Christmas puddings and start boiling 5 or 6 at a time.
Raisins and currants though.
Yeah.
Raisins and currants all stacked together.
Not for me.
Oh, not at all. I'll have a bit of trifle going now. Apple pie, apple crumble, obviously. You know, you'd never turn your nose up at a bit of that and a bit of custard. So that's me done. That's me pretty much done. Now, the after eight, will get a visit later in the evening, etc., etc., etc. But that'll be it. That's
do you sit down and watch the soaps, or do you watch a film then at night?
I wouldn't have watched soaps now for a long time. For a long time, I don't watch a lot of telly now. Full stop now. So I might have a little flick through now. Christmas Eve and the Saviors, maybe there'll be something there. I've been watching a little bit of late. I've stumbled upon a bit of the old classic comedies, Royal Family, and a couple of things like that. Faulty Towers. I mean, they amazing.
And Royal Family has an amazing Christmas special as well.
Royal Family is the writing in that. Caroline, bless her. What was her surname? The writer obviously starred in it. The actress.
She passed away as well.
Yeah, she did. But when you look at that now, the kind of the script, the dialogue between those, the family in that sitting room, it's amazing. We're talking about nostalgia in terms of football and kind of going back. I mean, that for households growing up, certainly my generation. I mean, that kind of definitely strikes a chord on the armchair in the house, the telly. all the tack, the party hats, you know what I mean, and the dialogue between them. That's like probably appreciated now more in terms of how good it was, the script, because that's still as sharp now for me as it was when that was put out 15, 20 years ago. Some of the other stuff which I really enjoy maybe waned a little bit, but certainly that Royal Family and one or two others, the writing and that, pretty amazing.
Yeah, like even though I've seen a few of these a million times, I'll always watch, say, the Father Ted Christmas special when it's on.
Right.
Inevitably it'll be on Channel 4, it'll be on RT2 at some point over the next few days. I can probably quote it almost word for word, but I still watch it every year. I think like a really good Christmas special is hard to do, but a lot of those kind of British sitcoms do it really, really well.
Yeah, they do. The Carolina Hearn was it, I think. Amazing. And the Gran, the Nan, wasn't it, blessed before she like passed. Wonderful character, all of them, like, you know what I mean? So probably them, to be honest with you. I'll stumble on them, but then they're like younger kids and stuff.
Yeah,
it's a little bit, it's not, I don't think it's a case of everybody. There's not too many of those shows now, is there? Everybody piles on the sofa, bang, and everybody's engrossed, is there? I don't know. Do you watch a lot of telly? Is there anything out there nowadays?
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
It's a different time, Kenny, as well, because like back then these were on like terrestrial TV and people had only a few channels, so like it became genuinely like a big occasion to watch one of these big series.
Yeah, of course.
Now like there's just so much choice, like, and you're getting hit with recommendations all the time. It's like, you should be watching Succession, watch Dopesick, watch whatever. Like this, I think it's a really good time for TV. Like there's really good stuff on right now, but it's hard to keep up with everything. Like if it wasn't for the pandemic, I wouldn't watch half the stuff that people have been recommending over the last year.
Are you talking like streaming now? You're talking Netflix and stuff
Netflix,
like that?
Disney Plus, Amazon, all those. You need 1 million accounts now to watch everything.
But is there any on that you think family? You know what it's like, family, kids of a certain age. Is there enough on Netflix like where it encompasses the whole family? Everybody's going to get a bit of enjoyment. Everybody's going to buy into. You know, some of the Netflix stuff. I think some of it's very good, but some of it can be like a little bit borderline stuff in terms of, you know, whatever, like, you know what I mean?
I think it's aimed at a different audience. Like I think a lot of the big TV series now are going after like a much older audience who are going to pay for the streaming service. So like the shows are aimed at a slightly more mature, that kind of like Royal Family, kind of, you know, a much wider interest. And as you said, where the whole family can sit down and watch something, that's kind of dying off a little bit. And like, look, I'm not going to watch it, but something like Mrs. Brown's Boys is probably trying to appeal to a wider audience. Like it's a dying art form now.
Yeah, it's not easy, you're right, to strike that tone. Yeah. No, I might do that. I'll have a little flick through. I tell you what I've stumbled upon of late, and it's probably showing me age. Fair enough, I'll hold my hand up. There's a programme on the BBC, right, The Repair Shop.
Right.
Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, yeah. Admittedly, I haven't watched it, so sell it to me.
Get on it, Will. Get on it. It's a very, very simple formula, if it's even a formula at all, like, where people, this big warehouse in the countryside somewhere in England, and there's these specialist people, tradespeople in here. Most of them look maybe retired, maybe not. They're of a certain age, but very skilled at what they do, like welders, carpenters, some in terms of putting old clocks together and all little toys, wind up toys, painting restorers and all this type of thing. So it's a big shed, open-ended shed, and basically people just come through. They arrive basically with their family heirlooms predominantly. That's the big catch, I think. They come in and they've got a story to tell. This is an item from my granny's house. She gave it to me ma when she was a young girl. She gave it to me. It's fallen into disrepute.
Can you guys get it back?
Can you do anything with it? And these things are in absolute bits, and they hand them over to these people, and you see the process in terms of trying to put these things back together, and it is phenomenal. The skill of these people in terms of what they do, taking these things apart and putting them together and then presenting them back to the people. Now there's a bit of an emotional thing there as well. They present them back.
It's going to be the hook, like my grandmother used to have this.
Yeah, so a little bit corny, a little bit cheesy, I can understand, but you really kind of buy into it and invest in it. But the skill set from these people in terms of what they do, and then when they present it back, you know what I mean? It's kind of a story in itself, like a very kind of a simple thing, like, and you might say very nostalgic. No big superstars, just kind of ordinary people will kind of say ordinary stories, but not really. When they get into the bones of it, like, and they give the history, what this thing actually represents, this heirloom and stuff, like, I think we can all kind of buy into that a little bit. So it's a funny type of thing you stumble upon, you kind of hang around, and all of a sudden, whoosh, you're into it. And that's kind of half far in the in the afternoons. That's like the dead zone. I don't. Maybe it is it? But
if you're a student, you love these. Like you watch Houses Under the Hammer and this kind of stuff on BBC, kind of early in the mid morning and into the afternoon. And like I have to admit, these were like a guilty pleasure of mine. Like I like that one where people go to get their goods evaluated as well. Again, usually there's a corny story to it. Oh, this was in the house and I found it, and I need the money because my kid needs an operation, and how much is it worth? And then they turn around and say, well, actually, this is a classic piece from the Egyptian age. It's worth 200,000.
Right,
like I kind of love that kind of crack. I'm a sucker for it.
Yeah, but I'd be different out to that. Anything with kind of that monetary, I'd always be a little bit suspicious. And now that one, like, this is an old clock. No, I really don't want to get rid of it. Oh, no, I'd no, the last thing I want to do is hand this to you for $2,500. But if you want to give me 3, I'll consider it. Yeah, for the reason. So I'm always a little bit sceptical of that. But the thing that I'm talking about, the financial thing, these people aren't coming here, restore this, I want to put on eBay the following day.
I want to keep it.
This is like on a much higher level, means an awful lot more. So, yeah, so anyway, that's my little pitch. The repair shop could destroy me credibility going forward, but who cares?
Both of our credibilities
who
are gone
cares
this morning. Don't worry about it. Right, the time is now 10 minutes past 8. You were watching OTB AM. It is brought to you by Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We've got a very busy show still to come. We'll hear from Sam Luckhurst and Mark Lawrenson in the next hour, but keep an eye out here in the ads for Ursula Jacob of Aulert de Bala from this week's episode of the Club Championship.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? If not, here's some of what you've missed over the last week.
You look at the game last night and you think to yourself, this Manchester City team are going to be the first Premier League team to score 10 goals in a match. It is going to happen. We are going to reach that high water mark.
He flicks it over the midfield player's head and then swivels on it and hits it with his foot in the corner, and we're all kind of stood there going, did he actually just do that?
We just put a picture of it up there, and you're in the corner of the screen watching it all unfold. Not closing them down either, I'd say, but there you go.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
Ursula, where does this rank? I mean, given you had all the success with Wexford at the turn of the decade, just before gone, and then you to have won 3 titles with Aulert de Bala. Probably people would have seen the picture over the weekend of you with just sheer tears of joy at the end of the game. Even when you go, I think it's fair enough for me to say 36 at this stage. Like, do you enjoy it that little bit more now, winning a title with your club, as you know you're coming towards the end of your career?
Yeah, without a doubt. Look, when we won the first one, first Club All-Ireland back in 2012, probably we all felt, oh yeah, this is going to happen every year nearly. You know, this attitude, you're that little bit more younger, maybe a little bit more naive, thinking, oh yeah, but that's not how it works out. Now, luckily, we have won 3 All-Irelands, but I would say this is definitely the sweetest. It's the manner in which we won. It's the manner of how this competition actually, got to be played. You know, at times we didn't think it was going to happen. And I suppose you're right. The older you get, I've appreciated every game and every win that bit more. And I think, when I look at that picture now, it was just an outpouring of relief, of happiness, pure joy. I still can't believe we've done it, because I myself, yes, I always knew we had a talented bunch of girls and a brilliant team, but I wasn't sure, had we maybe gone over the hill at this stage, and were we going to get our chance to play in an All-Ireland club final again? And I know some people were saying, oh, were you disappointed it wasn't in Croke Park? Honest to God, I would have travelled the Sarsfields pitch to play the All-Ireland if it meant we were playing it. So I was just thrilled that we were back in the final, and we said, look, this could be our last time in a final, so let's go out and enjoy it. And I think that's what we did, and I think that's why we got such a brilliant performance on Saturday. So yeah, I definitely think it is the sweetest one.
In football terms, right, if you can hit a certain amount of high speed distance, you can hit a certain sprint speed in a half of football, but like, you might have 3 possessions in a game. You might score a hat-trick, and you might cover 6k in total in the game. So it's important not to hide behind it. It's still football. At the end of the day, you're trying to win games. So I think it's very important not to hide behind the data. And I suppose that's potentially a gripe I would have had with football in the last few years, where we've probably become very data-driven, but the skills of the game can be forgotten.
Definitely, I think there's a real balance that you need to get between being obsessed with the data and then how do you feel yourself I like it. I'm kind of OCD like that. I do like looking at it and knowing that I've had a good week. I've had a few. I've had 1 or 2 fully green weeks of recovery, and it's nice. It's a nice feeling. But then it's also like you have to be realistic and look at yourself. And one of our S&C coaches in Ireland, who I used to play rugby with as well, underage, he was big into his group and still is, but he had a routine of waking up in the morning and writing down, not looking at his phone, and writing down how he felt he slept, how he felt his recovery was, like just based on what he had done. And I found that really interesting, because I've tried to get a few of my mates onto Whoop as well, and they're kind of worried, like a few athletes, and they were worried they'd be too bird's-eyed by the data. So it's I got a few of them turned around and told them not to be too worried about it. But for me, I like seeing it. I like looking at it, and I like the challenge of it, to kind of fitting it into your training week. Katie plays like 2 or 3 games a week, and it could be a bit different, whereas I'd have like 6 days of I can focus on pure training, pure recovery, and and build up to one game at the end of that week and go again. So yeah, I like looking at it. I like it's very accurate, obviously. So if you do well on that, there's a good chance you're going to feel good. And
car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for quick start insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Welcome back. You will have heard some of Ireland's top sports stars, including David Clifford and Conor Murray, there in the latest segment from the Crack the Code series with Whoop, the 24/7 personalised digital fitness and health coach that provides sleep, recovery and training insights. For more details, you can check out whoop.com. Some of the comments coming in. Brian Dillon on the YouTube, Kenny agrees with you entirely. Repair Shop is a great little show.
Two of us will.
A club of 2 at the very least. Ronan Fagan as well. This is the content I tune in for. See, sport is the mistake that we made trying to talk about football at the start. Love the Christmas dinner preps with Will and Kenny C. Thoroughly enjoying, lads. Fair play. And Richard on YouTube is giving you a little bit of credit with the cooking, I think. Kenny's going to have to go get his own premium range of cookware in super value over the next couple of years. So you start small, get the right turkey, next thing you're going to be king of the kitchen.
No, you're right. I think you're right. Just know your limitations. Somebody told me that when I started playing football at an early age. Will, I remembered it. I think the same applies to cooking, I think, as well.
Right, okay. We'll see how adventurous you can get over time. Let's have a look then at some of the back pages. But first we have a look at otbsports.com. Plenty of stories from overnight, including that conversation between Phillipe, Auclair, Joe and Graham Hunter, where they were taking a look at the football year just gone by, and Phillipe Auclair making the point that we've almost gone into a virtual stage of football now where we follow superstars as opposed to teams, and that's why there's so much around Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, despite the fact that Messi has done very little in France, just 1 goal in Ligue 1 so far since he signed for PSG. But people now follow players as opposed to following teams. Plenty of contract news on OTB Sports as well from the Rugby. Finlay Bealham giving Connacht the boost going into the festive period by signing a new multi-year contract just a day after it was announced that Ultan Dillane will be leaving the club at the end of the current season. Ulster have signed up a host of their frontline stars, and something we're going to be talking about in a few minutes' time. Barcelona have found some money down the back of the couch to sign Ferran Torres from Manchester City. It's going to be about €60 million in all, because there's variables on top of the 55, and Ferran Torres is expected to sign for Barcelona later today. You can read about all that on otbsports.com. Let's have a look at the back pages then. The Sun today have got Caoimhín Kelleher saves Reds, the penalty saves from Caoimhín Kelleher in the penalty shootout in the EFL Cup quarter-finals, sending Liverpool through against Leicester. And Mikel Arteta, you'll see there as well, you'll be sorry, saying that players' concerns around COVID-19 and the footballing fixtures coming up have to be listened to, or potentially it will damage football. Henderson as well in the bottom corner, you can probably see it there, no one takes it seriously. He's talking about players' concerns going into this period where he feels they're going to be exposed to COVID-19. And Stephen Gerrard saying that the festive pile-up is out of order. So very different to what you were thinking earlier, Kenny. Like, there's a few voices now, whether it be Gerrard or Henderson or Arteta, who feel like this is going to come just too much for them over this period.
Yeah, but I don't understand that. I heard Thomas Tuchel talking about danger. It's going to be a danger to me players, and so I said, I thought he was actually talking about the COVID situation, but when I listened to him more, he basically was just talking about the demands of games in quick succession. Now, COVID was a part of that. I think the point he was making, if I lose 4 or 5, 6 of me players, then that's going to put more demands on the other players within the squad. Well, yeah, of course it is, but that's nothing changes there. You could have 4 or 5, 6 players out with a multitude of different injuries. I mean, that's the nature of the game. That's the challenge. That's a challenge of the footballing season, and in particular playing in the Premiership. This Christmas schedule which we have is quite unique, so that's what you buy into that when you come into the Premiership. You don't come in and start moaning about. I'm very surprised at the players. This is what I'm talking about, this kind of negative spiel coming from managers. Now kind of players are buying into it. I mean, Jordan Henderson talking about, giving out, this is too demanding, you're going to be 30, we're going to be, somebody's going to pick up a hamstring strain and going to be out for 2 weeks. It's part and parcel. Just suck it up and get on with it. Give the J's to somebody else and they step in. Plus, it's part of the challenge of the Premiership.
Squads should be used now, shouldn't they? Like, a lot of these top teams that we're talking about have got huge squads. Like, they accumulate loads of players, they've got great academy players coming through. This is the time, surely you look at the midweek fixture and you say, right, well, I'm going to play a few kids here.
Yeah, if ever there was a time in football where the argument is pretty weak to make that the squad's being stretched, it's now in the modern game that you're saying. As I understand, there's a 25-man squad announced at the start of the season, like your Premier League 25-man squad. We all know that squads are vastly bigger than that, particularly the bigger teams. So for me, where we're at the moment, and I read between the lines, it looks as if there's a number there somewhere, maybe 7. If there's 7 players unavailable in the playing squad of that 25 through COVID, you've got to get on with the game. And for me, that's fair. I think the Premier League actually struck the right balance. If that's the case, it's been a little bit blurred. You haven't been overly open in terms of what the numbers are, but generally speaking, I think that's where we are. Chelsea had about 6, didn't they, then with COVID at the Wolves game, and they were screaming for it to be called off. Will, did you see the team that they put on the pitch?
I know, yeah.
If you'd have watched that team, you wouldn't have thought that was an understrength team.
They're the European champions and one of the strongest squads in Europe.
Yeah, and that was as close to the strongest team they could have put on the pitch. They had a couple on the bench. Yeah, they had a couple of kids, but like you're saying, there's some outstanding kids, and there's probably a multitude, probably close to 40 pros on the bench that you can dip into as well. So some of the young talent as well. So just get on with it. Accept the challenge of what it presents individually as a player yourself, in terms of how you prepare yourself and how you recover, and as a manager, embrace the challenge of, in terms of getting the team on the pitch to win any particular game. You might have to manage your squad for different reasons, whether it be natural injuries, hamstring strains, this and that, or maybe 3 or 4 out with COVID. Just get on with it. Accept the challenge. Be positive. Get through and get to the other side in as best a position as you can. That's the challenge for a player first and foremost, and for a manager in terms of managing the squad. Too much negativity, too much moaning, more of it again from what you're saying there.
We'll talk Man United in a moment. Sam Luckhurst about to join us, but just to look at some of the rest of the back pages, you've got City trebled their money on Ferran Torres. £55 million is what's been quoted on the back of the Mirror today, the transfer fee for the Spanish forward going to Barcelona. It's a lockout. This is probably going to be a talking point for quite a while. Potentially new measures might come in the UK, which could see Premier League games going behind closed doors again. 100,000 cases of COVID-19 reported in the UK yesterday. Kell for leather. A lot of the Irish papers are going with Kelleher from last night. Didn't do too well for the first goal that Leicester scored last night, but made himself a hero again in the penalty shootout. Again, they're also running with the story about Premier League is running on empty. The potential here for grounds being empty in the new year if new measures come in from the UK government. That is the back of the Irish Daily Star. Again, the Ferran Torres story is there as well. New RFU boss vows to prioritise women's game. Rory Keane in the back of the Irish Daily Mail. It's after the appointment was made of a new successor as the RFU chief executive, Kevin Potts, who's going to come in to take over from Philip Brown from January the 1st. And again, King Kelleher, you see Kelleher there making a penalty save in the shootout last night. Never say die for Liverpool at the back of the English Times today after they came from behind. 95th minute leveller, which sent it to a penalty shootout. They eventually won, and they'll play Arsenal in the semi-finals of the EFL Cup next month. They're also covering Martin Ziegler, Gerrard's fury at fixture crisis over the next while, and also there's some Toto Wolff quotes where he's speaking about potentially banning team bosses from speaking to race control during Formula 1 seasons. Anyone who's following the Formula 1 season that just finished, how often the teams are on the radio having a go at the race director and questioning decisions as it goes along. Toto Wolff, the head of Mercedes, is talking about potentially not now having the team bosses being able to speak to the race officials during the race. To me, part of the entertainment when you're watching along. Martial eyeing January exit. We can ask Sam about that in a moment. Anthony Martial has become a bit of a forgotten man at Manchester United over the last while. Kidney not ruling himself out of return to Munster's Keane Tracy story on the back of the Independent and on the Herald today. Declan Kidney staying fairly tight-lipped, the London Irish boss, about potentially going back to Munster when Johan van Graan leaves at the end of this season. Again, on the back of the Irish Independent Sport, you've got a story about Kingspan, who have taken a lot of flack because of their links to the Grenfell disaster. Potentially could be moving on from being the title sponsors of Kingspan Stadium in Belfast. Torres heading to Barca for 55 million. And again, the Independent is running with the Kidney story, not ruling out a potential return to Munster. And on the back of the Daily Telegraph, they've gone with the Ashes after a very disappointing first couple of tests against Australia. Some of their frontline players could be dropped ahead of test number 3. Now, delighted to say that Samuel Luckhurst, who is the chief Manchester United writer with the Manchester Evening News, is with us. Samuel, how are you getting on?
Morning. Very well, thank you. Merry Christmas to you both.
Yeah, and to you as well. We're going to talk about Erling Haaland, because you run the story this week that Manchester United are incredibly keen on signing him. Like, who in Europe isn't keen on signing a player who's been playing so well over the last 2 years for Borussia Dortmund? The game changer in many ways, Samuel, is the fact that his release clause comes down to probably a much more affordable one for Europe's top clubs at €75 million next summer. Is Ralf Rangnick the key if Manchester United are going to sign him? Because Rangnick would have been involved in his move from Molde to Red Bull Salzburg once upon a time. And you were writing that Rangnick has a decent relationship with Alfie Haaland as well.
That's right. He's been speaking to Alfie Haaland ever since he took over the role as interim manager of United in a bid to intensify United's interest there, just to make sure that they're aware that United still want him. United came close to getting him a couple of years ago when they tried to circumvent Mino Raiola out of a deal, and Raiola got wind of that, wasn't too happy, and Haaland ended up going to Borussia Dortmund. But people who knew the family were always adamant that Haaland was going to go to Germany, even though it seemed at one point that United were favourites to sign him. Raiola came out recently and pretty much whittled down the short list of clubs to City, Barcelona, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich. But then after that came out, I think when he saw it in black and white, he thought, I've restricted myself here, I've narrowed down my options, and I need to keep more options open in case another club offers better commission. If Manchester United are in a different place in 6 months' time, would they be a more appealing club than some of those clubs there? So he's rode back on those quotes, and from United's perspective, there's very little to lose with the pursuit. If they're not in for Haaland, then questions would be raised as to why they're not in for Haaland. And where there's so many forwards that are likely to leave United next year, or certainly attack-minded players, they are going to need a forward, and Haaland's the most coveted in world football at the moment.
Dealing with Mino Raiola then, I thought it was very tactical on his part to not name Manchester United when he was running through potential candidates. It felt like he was really shopping the idea of Haaland going to Spain for next year. But I think he's a practical man who knows that if Haaland gets the move he wants, he's going to get well paid along the way. And going to Borussia Dortmund always felt like a bit of a stepping stone for him along the way, that he knew that Borussia Dortmund would be a selling club in a couple of years' time. They inserted this clause in the contract to make him affordable after a couple of seasons. I think if Manchester United come in with the money, Raiola will still do a deal. Similarly, if they come with a good contract offer for Paul Pogba, I don't think Raiola is not going to do business with Manchester United.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, Dortmund have become the halfway house for Europe's top talents now. Jude Bellingham, if Borussia Dortmund have still got Jude Bellingham beyond the 2023 summer transfer window, they'll have done very well. Everybody fully expects him to leave in 2023. With Raiola, when he did transfer Pogba to United in 2016, Pogba initially was intent on going to Real Madrid. Zinedine Zidane was the coach. They just won the Champions League. Zidane was his boyhood hero as well, and every elite footballer wants to play for Real Madrid. But Raiola advised him to go to United, try and have that homecoming, try and make United a force again. And it was on the proviso that he would try and engineer a transfer to Spain 3 years down the line, which is exactly what he tried to do but failed. So due to a number of circumstances, Pogba is still at United. United haven't signed a Raiola client since Romelu Lukaku in 2017, which is clearly a conscious decision, and also reflects the relationship between the two clubs in terms of player signings anyway. But Ed Woodward, although he's about to hand over the torch to Richard Arnold, has always maintained that he actually gets on quite well with Raiola, and their relationship is pretty good, despite what Raiola has said about United in recent years.
Samuel, do you mind me asking you, clearly you've probably touched upon it there, I think if he was to sign for United, it's a given United would have to pay a premium to Raiola in terms of commission and even wages. He'd probably have to be earning maybe 10-20% more than he could get at any other those top European clubs, for the reason, of course, he wouldn't be guaranteed titles immediately signing for Manchester United in the summer, such as the distance between them and the likes of Manchester City and Liverpool at the moment. But it'd be interesting, do you think there'd be any type of discussion before Haaland came in terms of his role within the team? Because clearly there'd be players going out the door. Martial, we've heard this morning, Mata and one or two others. But for me, the conversation, as it ultimately is about Cristiano Ronaldo going forward, and how would Haaland fit into the team around Cristiano Ronaldo? Because only one position Ronaldo can play, that's a number 9 straight down the pitch, and predominantly there's only one position Haaland's going to play, and he's certainly not going to sign a Manchester United and dovetail with Cristiano Ronaldo as the number 9 position for a season or two. So do you think there would be a serious discussion there in terms of Haaland coming in and an assurance that he would be Manchester United's number 9 and the team would evolve around him? And as a result, where does that put Cristiano Ronaldo going forward in the short term?
Yeah, it's a key issue there in the way United are playing with the front two at the moment, that there'd be room for Haaland. He could play with Ronaldo, but nobody knows if Ralf Rangnick's going to be the next permanent manager of Manchester United, and if he isn't, will the next permanent manager play with a front two? The probability is unlikely. And in which case, would Ronaldo play on the wing? I don't think that you can really do that anymore, even though he's had spells there during games where he has done very well. But I suppose from United's perspective, they feel as though they can make a compelling pitch to Haaland in that he can play alongside Ronaldo, which is certainly an incentive for just about any player in the world. He can take the number 9 shirt because Anthony Martial is an irrelevance these days. He can be the main man at United. Manchester City achieving things there, although I think City are a more suitable club for Haaland in terms of just going there to be successful with Manchester City compared to making United a force again. I think United has bigger play there, but ultimately United needs to be in the Champions League next season. I think of all the issues there, if they're not in the Champions League next season, Haaland's no-go. And at the moment, although there's still a long way to go and they've got games in hand on Arsenal, it's far from a guarantee that they will be in the top 4 at the end of the season. Do you think that motivates players nowadays, particularly young players, Samuel, in terms of being that kind of catalyst for taking Manchester, that pitch to Haaland, say, look, this is where we're at the moment, we're a top 4 team, but we want you to lead us back to the top. We want you to be the catalyst. We want you to create something special here in the next kind of 4 to 6 years, as opposed to going up to the Etihad where Guardiola's saying you're just going to pop straight in there into the team. You're going to be a cog in the wheel, and a very successful wheel in that, in terms of guaranteeing trophies in the immediate short term. Do you think young players now buy into that? It's a compelling pitch, and it can work to an extent. You saw with Ronaldo, it worked. Although Ronaldo had obviously he'd played for United for 6 years, but Manchester City were going to sign him until United got wind of it and thought we can't let this happen. With Haaland, I don't think he's going to be of the same mindset as Ronaldo, and you've got the father factor there in that. Alfie Haaland obviously played for City, captain City when they got back to the Premier League in 2000, and that has its own narrative, if you like, in that it's the prodigal son returning to Manchester. There's that picture of Haaland as a kid in a Manchester City shirt as well. So whichever club, if he does go to one of the clubs in Manchester, either side can pull on the heartstrings and make it seem as though it's not just all about money. I suppose the other issue that City would have is that Guardiola is due to walk away in 2023, and just a season working under Guardiola, would that necessarily convince Haaland to go there in the first place, even though City are a very stable club and a very well-run club that you would expect them to get the next coaching appointment? after Guardiola, right? But I think for all intents and purposes, Haaland is just tailor-made for Real Madrid, and the prospect of Real Madrid having Haaland and Kylian Mbappe in their side next season is a realistic one, and that's probably the most compelling pitch of all.
Yeah, it's a scary prospect if Real Madrid do manage to get Mbappe, particularly if he's on a free, and if they were able to sign Haaland for somewhere in the region of 75 million. Now, a bidding war could well put it beyond that actual release clause, so we'll see what happens next summer. But both players look like they're going to be available as things stand, despite PSG putting a Mbappe 2050 jersey at his recent birthday celebrations. It seems he's fairly determined to go to Real Madrid. If City were to come in for Erling Haaland, like, it's the one piece they're missing at the moment is a number 9, and they've been able to work around it by putting players into the false 9 position and using various different combinations up front. But it could be bad news for Harry Kane if City get involved in a war to try and get Erling Haaland next summer, because Kane has had 2 summers now where it looked like Man City were going to come in, and instead Man City pushed their money to Jack Grealish last year, and Harry Kane was left at Spurs when, to me, it seemed pretty clear he wanted to leave.
Well, I think as soon as City weren't going to sign Kane, I think that it all but scuppered the chance of him going there next year. He will be 29, I think, next summer. Haaland is available. Okay, if Haaland doesn't go to City, then they have to look at an alternative. But Kane is clearly not as enticing a target at the moment as he was in the summer. His form has not been good. He looked back to his old self against Liverpool at the weekend. He doesn't want to be at Tottenham. But that contract he signed in 2018 for 6 years, which was ludicrously long at the time, I think it's outpriced him of a move. At no point in the summer did Tottenham think that they were ever going to sell him, despite all the posturing that goes with negotiations, which goes with those sagas. Tottenham were always very, very confident that he wasn't going. City were always very confident that they were going to sign him, but they never ever got anywhere near the asking price. You knew going into that summer that it was going to take well in excess of £100 million to sign Harry Kane because of his age, because of the length of his contract, his form last season, and because his chairman at Tottenham is Daniel Levy. And the Kane brothers rather naively underestimated Daniel Levy, and it was a source of amusement at Tottenham that Charlie Kane, Harry Kane's brother, thought that he could actually broker that deal, and it was just never going to happen, even though it was one of those stories that just ran and ran and ran. And now Kane's in limbo in that it's very difficult to identify a club that would take him next year. You could make a tenuous argument for United. United are time-served admirers of him, but signing another ageing forward next year and one who has played a hell of a lot of football for his age and had some injury issues which have clearly hampered his career to a certain extent, and certainly his efficacy when he has been playing for Tottenham. He's just not as an easy a player to go after next year as I think he has been this year, where most clubs in the world would have taken him at that point, but it's not worked out that way.
An ageing forward who's probably going to stay at Manchester United because of a departure from Man City now is Edinson Cavani. There was plenty of links, particularly in the Spanish media, that Barcelona were interested in signing Cavani, who has been out for quite a while with tendonitis. I think he's missed 11 games for Manchester United in this spell. He's still got a contract that runs till next summer after he extended by a year, but it looks like Cavani is probably going to stay for the rest of the season now that Ferran Torres has gone to the Nou Camp.
Yeah, I think there was some... At United, they were a little bit mystified by the incessant reports linking Cavani with Barcelona, and then all of a sudden you had this Ferran Torres deal come off when everybody thought Barcelona didn't have any money to spend. It's a very, very bizarre deal. It's not necessarily come out of the blue. Torres has been linked with Barcelona for a long time. You forget he's even at City, the lack of playing time he's had this season. But Cavani to Barcelona never really seemed to be a goer. It just seemed to be an exercise in self-preservation for Barcelona to maintain their aura, when in reality they're 8th in La Liga and they've just gone out of the Champions League at the group stage. And it wouldn't have made much sense for United to get rid of Cavani in January, given that they do need presence up front, that where they are playing with a front two at the moment. He is an intense runner when he does play. The problem is he's just not played enough. I think he's only been available for 8 games all season. And so it was just as well that they signed Ronaldo in the summer, because coming into this season, Cavani was due to be the starting striker. And dating back to, I think, February, March time, the United medical staff were declaring him fit for games, and he would then say, well, I'm not fit to play, and would effectively withdraw from the squad. So that was an issue that was rumbling on until April, when he caught fire, had a brilliant end to the season, and it made extending his contract a pretty simple decision, when up until then it was quite a nuanced and complicated one, because he was missing his family, he was in lockdown. By all accounts, he was having a pretty miserable existence where he couldn't really do anything and didn't particularly like the weather, unsurprisingly. Although it's one of those deals that hasn't completely worked out, he has been an asset for United. And when he did play with Ronaldo at Tottenham this season, they had one of their most accomplished victories, albeit against a team with a manager that they didn't want, and a manager who they then sacked 2 days later.
Samuel, a final one for you just before we let you go and enjoy your Christmas. Manchester United next summer, the winds of change could really be going through the club, given the contract situation of some of their players. Lingard, Pogba, Mata, Cavani. There could be a pretty big clear out here potentially.
Yeah, and I think the next permanent manager should relish that, in that if the decks are cleared, it empowers them to say, well, I need this player and that player, make team-focused signings that are going to enhance the team and get the team up to speed. It's a pretty good squad, despite where they are in the league, and despite the form in the last months under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But they will want a midfielder next year. They're certainly open to signing a midfielder in the January transfer window, but realistic to know that the chances of getting one who absolutely fits the mould and fits their profile of target is unlikely. A forward is going to have to come in, just as you listed there, the amount of attack-minded players that are likely to leave next year. They've got to do something to offset that. They've got a couple of young players coming through who might get their chances under Rangnick. You've already seen Anthony Elanga get some playing time. Hannibal Mejbri has done well at the Arab Cup and might get his chance in the second half of the season as well. But they're certainly going to need 2 or 3 significant signings again to really become a credible force and finally mount that title challenge that they were supposed to mount this season, but didn't. That challenge was over before it even started, pretty much because they had the players, but they didn't have the manager.
Well, Samuel, enjoy the Christmas coming up in the new year and all the festive football. And thanks a million for joining us on OTB AM.
Thank you very much.
Kenny, what do you reckon of Ferran Torres going to Barca then? To me, this seems like good business for Man City. Like, he's a talented young player. He's played very well for Spain. But to triple your money on a transfer from 18 months ago is good business, I reckon.
Oh, but there's got to be more to it than that, will I suggest? Because like you say, he's really impressed, particularly in that central striking position, and when he's been pushed in there. Of all the kind of players that Man City play there, I mean, I disagree with everybody who says that Manchester United don't have Man City don't have a number 9. I think they do. Jesus, for me, is a natural number 9, just doesn't play him there. But for all the other false 9s that you're talking about who've played in that position, Ferran Torres, the more I've looked at him in that position, even playing for Spain, he looks to me looks more the natural kind of centre forward in terms of the positions that he takes up, the kind of runs that he makes into the box. So from that point of view, yeah, I know the maths make sense, how you're tripling your money, but surely that's not a factor for Manchester City. You get a bit of a sense of maybe a little bit clearing the decks out, bank that money for what's coming in the summer. I mean, obviously all the talk's been about Haaland. You would imagine potentially that's even for a club like Manchester City, the kind of package that you're going to have to put together to bring him to the football club. There might be a sense of, right, let's get everything, let's move the pieces around the board a little bit, and part of that might be let's sacrifice Ferran Torres 55 million, throw an extra whatever it's going to take on top, and guarantee that Haaland's the next man to arrive in the door in the summer. Yeah. So it makes sense in that respect.
Couple of years of Haaland's potential wages by selling Ferran Torres as well. Colin Mullaney has joined us in studio to have a look at the sports news as well. Colin, how are you getting on this morning?
Not too bad, lads. How are you?
Yeah, good. What's in the sports news this morning, Colin?
Well, Kelleher is top of the list this morning after playing a key role for Liverpool as they booked their place in the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup last night. The Republic of Ireland goalkeeper saved 2 penalties to earn a win for Jurgen Klopp's side over Leicester at Anfield. Takumi Minamino scored a stoppage time equaliser to level the game at 3-3 before Liverpool won 5 5-4 in the shootout. They'll play Arsenal in the semi-finals after Christmas. On the other side of the draw, Antonio Conte will go up against his former club. His Tottenham side progressed courtesy of a 2-1 win over West Ham. They'll take on Chelsea. In the last four, they enjoyed a 2-0 win away to Brentford. Jurgen Klopp has also been speaking as well about possibly the semi-finals not taking place over two legs and being one-off matches, so we'll see how that progresses and develops over the coming weeks. Elsewhere in Scotland last night, Celtic manager Ange Postecoglou says he can't believe they didn't find the net with one of their 31 attempts against St Mirren last night. They were held to a 0-0 draw and are now 6 points adrift of Rangers at the top of the Scottish Premiership. Elsewhere, a good start for Sean Mullaney as Hibernian managers. They beat Aberdeen 1-0. St Johnstone were 2-1 winners over Ross County. And on the COVID front, the 3-week break now in the Scottish Premiership has been brought forward. That'll now start after the St Stephen's Day fixtures. That has been brought forward because of crowd limitations from St Stephen's Day in Scotland of 500. So that break will last for 3 weeks. Premier League managers and captains, meanwhile, will hold meetings this afternoon to discuss player welfare and fixture congestion following the rise in coronavirus cases at top-flight clubs. A full fixture list is due to go ahead over Christmas, of course, but a number of the top stars are believed to be unhappy that they have not been consulted. So I just wonder, is the Premier League in danger of crowds being limited in the coming days and weeks?
I think so, Carl. I mean, it's one of those things that's been floated in quite a few of the newspapers today, and you see what's happened in Wales, where all their sporting fixtures are going behind closed doors. Scotland are going in heavy on their measures, as you mentioned, from St Stephen's Day. At some point, I think England is probably going to follow on that. Like, it's coming down to 10,000, and I've got this really bad feeling. I don't know how you feel about this, Kenny. We talked about it a few times in the show with different sports. I am dreading the possibility of major sporting events going back behind closed doors.
I hope not. I really hope not. I think you have to think outside of the context of like the football, and it's just people themselves. People are going absolutely bonkers. This kind of Christmas, New Year schedule, people are living for a football support. Say, talk about the football Premiership, Championship, whatever. Absolutely living for this Christmas kind of New Year, you know, that kind of tradition, getting out of your house Stephen's Day with the family, your young fella, traipsing down to the stadium, sucking it all in, people there, friends, acknowledging people, conversation, going in, enjoying the game and everything that kind of throws up. It's the whole event, isn't that? Not just the 90 minutes of football, isn't it? It's the whole occasion of it, you know what I mean? Getting out and going there and being part of something bigger, particularly at the moment where we are. So I think that's huge. Even people's kind of mental state, that's absolutely, that alone will get you through the next couple of weeks. That bit of buzz going to see your team the 26th or even that one the 28th New Year's Day, that's absolutely everything for people. I think that shouldn't be underestimated. It's probably not talking about enough. We're talking about players like, oh, my hamstring could be tight if I have to play, oh, I'm not happy, I haven't been consulted. I mean, players being consulted, like, I mean, you're a paid employee at a football, but get your head down and you plough through it regardless. I'm sick of hearing people like just coming out publicly and voicing their opinion, like, oh, players' opinions aren't being listened to, like, you know what I mean? Crazy stuff. It's big. The story's bigger than that for the reasons that I've said, like, and probably hasn't been enough discussion about that. That's why I'd like to see them stay in place. Obviously you want to be as safe as possible, don't get me wrong, but I agree with you, a massive step forward. And it's not the same. Well, the games will still go ahead. That's not the same sitting on your sofa, is it? Rolling out of bed, not even getting out of your pajamas, like having your bowl of Rice Krispies in front of you and casually putting on the telly. And
well, did you see the two Champions League games that were empty stadiums? Like, it was like going back to summer 2020, the Barcelona, Bayern, and Leipzig and City.
Yeah, for everybody, the players themselves, like, and like I said, players for me isn't the focus. For me, it's more about the supporters and the general population. What they need as well is just as important as what players are talking about in terms of, oh no, I'm gonna be a bit stiff the day after, and people don't realise, I'm not showing enough concern from. Come on.
Right, we'll get Mark Lawrenson's opinion in a moment. What else is happening, Carl, before we bring Lawro in?
Yeah, a couple of other stories, Will. Declan Kidney says he's happy in his current role despite speculation linking him with a return to Munster. The former Ireland coach who guided the province to 2 Heineken Cup titles is currently director of rugby with London Irish. Munster are on the lookout, of course, for a replacement for Johan van Graan, who'll leave for Bath at the end of the season. Some reports suggest this morning that Kidney could be poised for a return to Thomond Park, though he has played down speculation in the Irish Independent this morning. On the cricket front, disappointment didn't for Ireland last night. They suffered a shock 26-run defeat in their first T20 international with the United States in Florida. The tourists made a bright start there. They reduced the US to just 16 for 4 at one point, but the hosts recovered to post a total of 188. In response, Ireland could only manage 162 for 6 from their 20 overs. Some strong comments as well from captain Andrew Balbirnie this morning. The sides will meet again tomorrow in another T20 international. There are 3 one-day internationals as well. And just on the darts wheel to finish, Fermanagh Brendan Dolan is in second round action this afternoon at the Alexandra Palace. He faces Callan Ridds for the right to play Nathan Aspinall in round 3. And one game to look out for this evening, a meeting of former champions as Raymond van Barneveld takes on Rob Cross.
Yeah, O'Connor really good yesterday afternoon, going through in a clean sweep. And yeah, we'll see where Barney's at. That's a difficult match against Rob Cross. As Carl mentioned, 2 former world champions. Carl, have yourself a Merry Christmas. Thanks a million for keeping us up to speed.
Thank you very much.
It is now coming up to just 10 minutes before 9 o'clock. You are watching OTB AM, which is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Delighted to say Mark Lawrenson, Liverpool legend, is with us. Mark, how are you getting on?
I'm getting on very well, apart from the fact you're just telling me that Ireland are playing cricket in Florida. What are we doing?
Badly. Playing cricket badly in Florida.
Yeah, Kenny and I...
It doesn't matter. Listen, it could be badly or great. We just need to be in Florida. Bloody hell, boys.
Kenny and I get all the bad gigs having to chat about football in studio a couple of days before Christmas. We were chatting earlier on, Mark. Kenny picked out the royal family as what he likes to watch at Christmas. What are you watching in the Lawrensons household?
Oh, I don't know really, because I probably don't watch too much telly on Christmas Day. Too busy getting slaughtered. Isn't that what it's for?
Talking about Liverpool getting slaughtered by Leeds.
Yeah, well, no, I'm going to do the game. I'm at that game, and then I'm clearing off to Mallorca for a week. So it was.
And he's digging out the Irish cricketers. He's digging out the Irish cricketers being in Florida, heading off to Mallorca.
Absolutely.
People in glass houses, Will.
There you go.
Exactly, yeah. I'm all right because I've got no glass in this house.
A man of the world, Kenny. I'm telling you, Mallorca this time of year is not bad.
The golf's good. The golf's good this time of the year. I know that.
No, I'm not. Well, I'm not playing. I've got to be a good boy and stuff because we're looking to do something to the house. So I'll have to.
Oh, big extension, Will. Big extension to the villa in Mallorca. Say no more, Mark. Say no more.
In the background, is that another conservatory going in behind Mark in the background at the moment?
He's drawn up the plan. He's got the plans in front of him there. We can't see them. They're on the desktop in front of him.
I've got my brew in front of me.
Laura, I was asking Kenny earlier, what does Christmas dinner look like in the Cunningham house? What's Christmas dinner like in your place?
Just relatively quiet, just a family. My daughter's had COVID, so she comes out in the next 2 or 3 days from self-isolating. So, yeah, it'll just be quite a quiet one, to be honest with you. And obviously getting ready to go to Mallorca on the day after, as it were. So, no, just nice and quiet, but lots to drink, lots to eat.
Do you get involved, Mark, the Christmas Day, the cooking the meal? Do you hover? Are you one of them people who hover around
Kenny,
dispensing advice to the cook?
Kenny, in a word, no. I open the bottles, mate.
Has to be done too, you know.
But when I say the cook, Mark probably gets the cook in. He rents the cook in for the day, like, you know what I mean.
What do you mean, the cooks? How about the cooks, not the cook?
See, a conveyor belt in their house by comparison, Kenny. You're worrying about getting the turkey right. Mark's got a full staff ready to go.
Mark's got a lot on that big extension. He's got a lot on this Christmas, New Year. I feel sorry for him.
Busy boy.
With the football, Mark, you mentioned this is a very busy period for Liverpool. Go to Leeds on Sunday lunchtime on St. Stephen's Day.
They're at home, aren't they?
They're at home, yeah. So just off the back of a decent home victory in the end against Leicester to qualify for the semi-finals of the League Cup. It'll feel like a particularly sweet win, given that it looked like Leicester at that game won right up till the 95th minute. Liverpool force it onto penalties and come through in the end. Like, Klopp wants to win as many trophies as he possibly can with this club. I know it adds to fixture congestion, but he'd be delighted, I'd say, to get to the semi-finals of the competition.
Oh, I saw his interview. I don't know if you saw it. It was absolutely over the moon. And he said even at half-time when they came in 3-1 down, he was just saying to the boys, look, you've got to keep going. And I think the other thing is, Leicester were quite strong, weren't they, in the team that picked, and Liverpool in the odd position were quite strong, but generally, you know, they paid most of the kids, and I think he loves it. He loves it, and the thing for him as well, it keeps players who aren't playing regularly when they come in and play the games. It keeps them on side with him, on side with the football club, etc. And it's just a really, really good win for them. So they kept going, which is the most important thing. Another full house, which is also good. So semi-finals now.
And like from an Irish perspective, Mark, we're obviously looking for any opportunity for Caoimhín and Kelleher to play. And like he's not going to play a huge amount unless Alisson gets an injury, like to play in the Champions League or in the league again. So the League Cup is an opportunity for him to play. Again, he made himself a bit of a hero last night. A bit of a mistake from him for the first goal in normal time in the game. But he, again, is a really good penalty saver. And he was getting some credit from Virgil van Dijk on social media afterwards too. Kelleher, it's so important for him to actually be getting a bit of football now.
Yeah. Most important, and every time he's come in, he's done really well. He made a couple of really good saves in the game, as well as obviously the penalty saves. So he's definitely number 2 now, obviously in front of Adrian, and he's growing and growing in terms of not just in stature, but also in, you know, I quite often when I go to the games, we do pieces just by the cop, and we watch the goalkeepers kind of warm up and everything. And he seems to be getting taller and a little bit wider, so. He's going to have a real chance, isn't he? But the problem is that the fellow in front of him is arguably one of the best in the world. But the other thing with Kelleher as well is in training all the time, he's playing against world-class players. So that can only possibly bring him on. He seems a decent lad, which is another thing as well. And I'm told he's really, really a quick learner. He's happy to learn as well, and hopefully he'll go far.
Do you think there comes a point though, Mark, from Liverpool's point of view, obviously got an outstanding young goalkeeper there, but he hasn't got as much game to him. This time last season he'd had a couple of Champions League games under his belt. He was getting a few more minutes on the pitch. So I think the argument was stronger then, wasn't it? Well, he's got to stay there. He's number 2. He's getting game time. He's getting the experience. He's working with world-class players that you were talking about there. But there's going to come a point in his development over the next year or two, isn't it? That's not going to be enough, is it? A half a dozen games thrown in his direction, like, isn't going to be enough, particularly when you look at the Irish setup. Bazzuno's ahead of him now. I know he's playing football at a lower level, but he's playing regular competitive first team football. So that moment's going to come at some point from him. He's going to have to make a big decision.
Well, yeah, but I don't think Klopp will let him out. I really don't think he will. And I think, you know, what I said to you before about obviously in training against all the top players, I think that's really, really important. The problem is, as you know, Kenny, if he goes to the Championship, if they let him out, that's a completely different experience because you get battered, you know, and crosses will come in and corners, etc., and they'll surround him and all those kind of things, which doesn't really happen generally in the Premier League unless you're playing Burnley. So it's one of them. What do you do? But I think Klopp will be really, really reluctant to let him out. I understand what you're saying and I agree with you, but I just don't think it will happen. I think Klopp will err on the thing of, you know, you're in training every day, all these players, your Salahs and your Manes and all these kind of Jotas and all those. He said, so I want you just to stay. And by the way, Adrian, I mean, he couldn't keep bees anymore, so you wouldn't want him as number 2.
Mark, how do you see it like Liverpool so far this kind of season? Obviously in a very healthy position. Good news last night. Great position, Champions League, where they want to be on the coattails in Manchester City. But if you look beneath the surface a little bit, generally in terms of their performances, there's been some outstanding team performances individually. Salah, we know how good he's been, but is there a little bit of you looking at it with your eyes, a little bit of a sense of unease? The probably Tottenham game was a good example. I know they had a couple of players missing, but just in terms of how that little bit open they can be in terms of the amount of chances that they're kind of giving up generally so far this season.
Well, you look at Brighton at home, Brentford away, West Ham away, and obviously Chelsea as well away. So they obviously don't like going to London. That's one thing. But and Van Dijk's not back to his imperial best yet. I think he's still got a little bit of a way to go. If anything, Matip's been the better of the 2 central defenders. But they're just chipping away. I think, you know, everybody's getting games as well. He's managed to get Thiago fit, the manager, which is a massive thing. Fabinho's now back in his normal position where he's just an outstanding player as cover for the 2 central defenders, etc. They have been a little bit sloppy on occasions, but they're right up there, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, look at City. City got beat at home to Palace, didn't they? And Chelsea have just had an iffy run. So, and those 3 teams, I think, will be loads of points clear of everybody else. So Liverpool have just got to keep in there. But, I mean, the form in the Champions League was just outstanding. They won every single game, didn't they? So just keep going. That's the only thing you can do. I mean, Klopp's had his big moan up today as well about playing on the 28th. hasn't he? And it's quite right, actually, because everyone could have played on the 29th. So you play 26th and 28th. And I know we all used to do it, but it was a different product. In fact, it wasn't even a different product certainly when I played. It was just like football, but it's completely different now. And I think it makes a really good point, which is, why? So play on the 26th, Boxing Day, brilliant. We all love Boxing Day, players and supporters. But then play on the 29th. Give them an extra day.
Isn't that where you have to bow to the kind of TV and the schedule and that, Mark? You take the big money off the Premier League and yakety yak, you know what I mean? Then you hand over a bit of that control to the broadcasters, don't you, in terms of where they can pick where the games are going to be played. So I'll just make a point to Will there. I just don't like to hear too much moaning from managers and players generally. You hear a lot of moaning out from players in terms of, we're never consulted, we should be consulted, and it's not fair, and there's too many demands. That bit of a negative cycle that's spin around the football. I'd never like to hear too much of that.
No, I know you're right, but they're just they can move this fixture one day, and they'll tell you if you play within 2 days, your body's not recovered from the previous game. I mean, that's what all the medical science is and everything.
Yeah, but that's the challenge, Mark, isn't it? That's the challenge when you're not 100%, and you know that, and you have to manage your game and kind of get through it. That's the challenge, isn't it?
But the only thing with that, Ken, is you tend to get more injuries if you're only playing 2 days later. And I think that's, for Liverpool, that would be quite a big problem, because they've not got a bigger squad as Man City and also Chelsea as well. So I get it, you know. I mean, I don't know what you were like, but I would have played every day because I hated training. So, but it is just a bit different now, because, you know, it's like they're expected to be brilliant every single week because everything's in their favour, you know, the way they train, the way they get looked after, medical side, the pitches are unbelievable, all those kind of things. But I do think he's got a case with just move it for everybody to the 29th, and everybody would agree, but it's not going to happen, so they'll have to get on with it.
You'll be in Mallorca, though. That extra day, like, that takes you won't be able to attend. You'll be on your flight to Mallorca by then, though. That won't fit in with your schedule, will it?
Listen to this. On the 2nd of January, guess who Real Mallorca play?
I'm going to guess they've Real Madrid, do they, Mark?
Barcelona. I'm going for Barcelona.
Barcelona. I'm there.
Oh, I bet you won't pay for that ticket either. You won't be paying for your ticket Boxing Day at Anfield. You won't be paying for that one either.
Listen, I shall seriously try not to. Graham Lasso is like an advisor to the board in Mallorca, because he's got a house there as well. So
he's advising them to give you a free ticket. He's going to advise them to give you a free ticket.
Kenny, he's getting a phone call very shortly. Don't worry about that. I only want 2. I don't want any more than 2. Just 2 will do.
I'd love to see that black book you have, your telephone book, Mark. See what names are in there. I'd say, oof, some big hitters in there, I'd say. Graham Lasso wouldn't be on the first page, I reckon. He wouldn't even make the first page.
I could quite possibly say that, maybe.
There you go, Graham Lasso officially on page number 2. Mark, can I ask you about one of the young players that's coming through at Liverpool at the moment? Because he's an interesting story in Tyler Morton, where he was playing with the Liverpool 23s. I think I saw during the week this time last year. He was playing well down in the Division 2 with the reserve team, and here he is now starting at the San Siro a couple of weeks ago in the Champions League. And because of circumstance with injuries and with the players out with COVID, he's been playing a bit for Liverpool in recent weeks. What have you made of him so far?
You know, so far so good. I mean, he wasn't particularly great at Tottenham, but his debut was against Porto, wasn't it? I was there. He was really, really good. But I have to tell you, I don't think he'll make it there eventually, because the competition for places is so strong. The lad's going to make a really good living from the game, but I just don't see him ever really being a number 1 pick for Liverpool. Yes, he's young. Yes, he's relatively inexperienced. He looks a little bit lightweight, which I think might be one of his problems. But he's certainly a player. But I don't see in 18 months' time that he will be regular in the Liverpool team. And I think, you know, when we talk about players who aren't going to play many games, he arguably will be one, and somebody will come and take him, and that will improve him, obviously. But not... See, you know, if you're a Liverpool player, or obviously Chelsea, Man City, Man United, you've got to be Champions League standard. And I just don't think he's going to get there. But I do think he'll have a good career somewhere. Yeah,
not a bad shop window for him to be in at the moment.
Well, great, isn't it?
Yeah. Diogo Jota, Mark, has been a man possessed this season. Like, Firmino's hamstring injuries have meant that he hasn't been able to play a huge amount of football, so Jota's got to play a lot more through the middle. Fantastic old school header at Spurs last weekend in the Premier League. And Liverpool haven't lost a huge amount by Jota starting as opposed to Firmino this season.
Oh, they've lost nothing. In fact, they've gained, because he scores more goals than Firmino. Firmino's obviously different because he normally when he plays he's the glue for the other two, for Mane and Salah. But Jota's been fab, and you mentioned headed goals. He doesn't half get up well, and he very, very rarely misses the target with a header. He works hard as well. He buys into all that kind of stuff, and he's got a bit of devil in him as well. He's only kind of smallish and slight, but he doesn't let people knock him around. So he's just been a fabulous signing. I mean, I'm sure Klopp, when he signed him, thought, he'll train on, might take him a while. But as soon as he got in the team, he just started scoring, and supporters love him, obviously, who wouldn't be? And he's one of those, I think all the players like him, but they also know that he keeps coming up with goals, which is obviously great.
Kenny, he's been like a good signing when you consider it's very difficult when you had the front three that Liverpool had that worked so well together, had won a Champions League, had won a Premier League, particularly with Salah and Mane, the amount of goals that they get. It's difficult to bring someone in where they're not necessarily going to be a starter, which is the case when Jota signed from Wolves. Yeah. He gives you cover on the wing. He's now really good in the number 9 position as well. He's turned out to be a damn good signing.
Yeah, but like Mark said, probably similar to Mark when he first came to the football club, I thought, well, he's versatile in terms he could operate off either flank really. So I was thinking maybe cover for Mane or Salah, and he'd come in, he'd get his fair share of minutes. But where he surprised everybody, myself probably Mark included, is how good he's been down the centre of the pitch. And he is a slightly different type of player to Firmino. Firmino can drop in and link things up. I'm not saying he can't do that, but his natural instincts, Mark, are to take him in behind and into the penalty box. He wants to attack those spaces near post, in between the two posts. And like you say, for someone so small, is that spring and just that timing in terms of getting his headers on target. That has been a surprise, to be honest with you, how good he is in that area of the penalty box, how calm he is, and how clinical he is in some of his quality of his finishing.
And his movement's great. His movement in terms of getting in late, which is why he gets so many headed opportunities, is just excellent. He kind of goes in there and he doesn't miss.
We were chatting, Mark, earlier, myself and Kenny, about the international windows coming up, and potentially this could be a game changer for Liverpool if the African Cup of Nations doesn't take place and Mane and Salah don't have to travel. No, Keita wouldn't have to travel either, but if that doesn't happen and Liverpool have those players available throughout January, that's a big difference when they're right on City's coattails in the Premier League title race. Yeah,
well, I think haven't they worked out that if they do go, they'll only miss 2 Premier League games, I think, and the games, I don't think, every game's difficult because you can't roll anyone over in this league, but, well, apart from Newcastle or Norwich, but
Leeds.
No, they'll come back. But so they're saying, look, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world, but no, it would be a Brucey bonus if they don't have to go, because you've got all the travel and all that kind of stuff and everything, and it would make a difference. But they'll be desperate to play it, won't they? That's the only problem. But I think the 2 Liverpool boys as well, I think they were being allowed to go there a little bit later. I think maybe only land 4 days before the first game or something like that. I think there's been a little bit of a deal done, obviously, if it goes ahead, that they only get there 4 days before the first game, apparently.
I know we're joking about Leeds here, but when it comes to Sunday, this seems a good time to play this Leeds team. They had a lot of players missing for Arsenal last week. They were at home. They got stuffed at Elland Road. It's not been a great season for them so far. And in the reverse fixture, which was only a couple of months ago, Liverpool ran riot at Elland Road against them. Not to kind of set Liverpool up for a fall here for Sunday, but it would seem this is not a bad time to play Marcelo Bielsa's side.
That's a good time because listen, Leeds, as good as they were last year, they weren't great defensively. And, you look at people like Cooper, who I think it's too much for him at this level. He's an outstanding centre-back in the Championship, but not at this level. The goalkeeper's had a few iffy days as well. Phillips has missed a load of the games. Obviously, Bamford's missed lots of the games as well. And they were flogged to death last year by the manager, which is absolutely fine. Everybody's worked out how to play against them. And at the moment, the injury list is really, really bad. If you saw the bench the other day when they played Arsenal, it was like the dog and duck, wasn't it? So I think from that point of view, Liverpool should win. But, they're still feisty. Leeds will be fine. And I think the way the club is now as well is that if Bielsa goes in and says, I need a couple of players in January, I'm pretty sure they'll find the money. Obviously, they've got to find the players as well. But I don't see them being an issue. And if you remember, Kenny was probably a bit like me. I was watching Bamford playing all the loan games, wherever he went, 7 or 8 clubs, and I just thought, never ever going to make it in the Premier League, but he's been brilliant. And now you'd say even maybe more than Phillips, he's the guy they really miss because they just don't get enough goals.
It's how they play, Mark, isn't it? How you'd worry from going to Liverpool at the weekend. I'd agree with you in terms of some of the deficiencies of some of the individual players there. Cooper, I think even Llorente coming in there has been a bit of a disappointment for me, and now Phillips in that central midfield area. But those deficiencies, they don't protect themselves, Mark. When I used to play back in the day, and I would have been limited very much in some respects in terms of speed and a couple of other things, but you kind of, you have to modify your approach a little bit, get people around you, you protect the space in behind you, and you kind of protect yourself a little bit. You realise your deficiencies and you kind of you work around it. But this Leeds team, they just come out, they open themselves up and they go after you as high up the pitch as possible, and they leave those kind of centre halves particularly exposed. I mean, that's tailor made for Liverpool. I mean, Liverpool won't fall into that trap. It's trying to play out from the edge of the box. They'll hit the front three early and play down the sides and in behind. So you can see Liverpool time and time again, getting down the sides and in behind that Leeds defence.
Yeah, I mean, he won't change the way he plays, does he? Because that's what he's known for.
Do you understand that, Mark? Though, Mark, do you understand that? And I'd reference I'd actually reference Klopp last year, Mark. Now it all went pear-shaped. The grenade went off last year. They lost Van Dijk and a load of different players. Fabinho was back at centre half. They'd Nat Phillips there, who'd be very one-paced as well. You're talking about Cooper. So Liverpool were a different beast last year. So for me, that was the first time I was looking at Klopp saying, well, look, ideally you want to play a certain way, squeeze to the halfway line, nice and compact, high press, that type of thing. But for me, there was a period last year Liverpool hadn't the players to do that. They hadn't got the pace at centre half to actually do that. But Klopp's mantra was still the same, Mark, wasn't it? We're still the same. This is the Liverpool way. We don't change. Now, I'm a little bit different that, because I think, well, if the situation changes, you've got different personnel on the pitch who haven't got those attributes in terms of speed, athleticism that ideally you want with the likes of Van Dijk, Gomez, etc. You have to change your approach. The very best managers may recognise that and actually modify their approach a little bit and have to change in the short term because of that. Do you know what I mean? You're saying about Bielsa there.
Yeah, but he doesn't. And I think if you saw them in training, Kenny, it's all geared towards press. And I think he's one of those who's probably thought about it and thought, you know what, if I then start to play a different way, one or two of them then stuck in that mindset, should I go, should I stay, all those kind of things in terms of the way that they play. I think he's made a decision, which is, look, this is the way that we play. Everybody in the club, the under-23s, under-19s, all that, that's, if you watch them play, it's exactly the same. And I think he's doing that obviously because maybe you might get one or two of the younger boys through eventually. So when they come into the first team setup, they know exactly what's expected of them and the way that they play. But it's a strange one in many ways. But I think certainly with Leeds playing that way, and if they do get Phillips and Bamford back for 15 games, say after Christmas, they'll beat all the teams around them. So I don't think they'll be getting relegated.
He can play, Mark. Raphinha, I'm sure how much you've seen of him play this season. He looks like a player to me. His body language suggests to me he's not going to be at Leeds for too much longer. He feels as if he can go and improve and get himself to a higher level. He just senses as if in terms of, I even look at him and think he's a Liverpool type player. He's someone who could come into that Liverpool front three and make a contribution. Because you're talking about Jota coming into that central midfield area. Well, he's played in the pockets a couple of times this season, almost as a 10, Raphinha. Very comfortable there playing on the half turn in those tight little areas. And he's been very effective playing off the right hand side as well. I think potentially looking forward for Liverpool, if they can't spend the big money, if they're not going to be in the market for the likes of Haaland and Mbappe and players like this, somebody like him, probably similar in the mold to Jota when they got him in for that fee. Somebody like him, Mark, could really be an asset.
Yeah, he's a player. And if you look at Liverpool, apart from Alisson and Van Dijk, they only pay around about 30-40 million tops for players. And they kind of get players who they think obviously that they can improve. And I wouldn't say Raphinha's the best team player, but if he did get to Liverpool, he would have to be, because that's what Klopp demands. But he is an outstanding player. He's got loads and loads of ability. And Kenny, I mean, once you go playing a better team with better players, you become a better player yourself. Yeah,
particularly if Mo doesn't get his 500 grand a week in the summer, Mark, and he's on his way. You know what I mean? You're going to need another right winger. You're going to need another right winger soon. Do a bit of scouting over in Mallorca. Have a look at that. They're set up over there, right winger. See what he's like.
he's not going to take a drop, Mo, is he, from his 500?
Lawro, thanks a million for joining us. Enjoy the Christmas and the trip over to Mallorca and that game with Barca and Mallorca next week.
You too, boys.
Take care, Mark.
Thanks a million, Mark. You were watching OTB AM. Still to come on OTB Sports Radio today from 10:30. I will be back in the seat again for the kick-off with Sky. We'll be looking forward to the games on St. Stephen's Day. 1 p.m, OTB Gold is with Cora Staunton. 3 p.m, we've got Leaders' Questions with Stuart Lancaster. We've got a retro panel, which is boxing and GEA after 4 p.m. And 6 p.m. is Bod meets Isa. It's where Isa Nathewa and Brian O'Driscoll, former Leinster teammates, went for a walk and a chat. And OTB is live, of course, from 7 p.m. tonight. We've still got rugby to come with Gavin Duffy. We'll be looking forward to Connacht's trip to Ulster on St. Stephen's Day in the United Rugby Championship. But first, keep an eye on the ads for Ger and Gavin Cromwell having a chat as OTB went out to the Mead Trainers' Yard ahead of the Christmas racing schedule.
OTB AM.
He's a Lion, he's a Grand Slam winner, he's Ireland's leading try scorer, and now you can hear him first, exclusively on the OTB Sports app.
One of my abiding memories is having my cut opened up again as I got hit by the trophy in coppers on the dance floor.
Join Brian O'Driscoll for the best insight and analysis this rugby season.
We haven't had the usual kind of grenades from Gats, that's gone, so we're creating them ourselves.
Get the jump on everyone else. Download the OTB Sports app and turn on notifications now.
Do any horses ever do a really bad day's work and you're like, ooh, something's wrong here?
Yeah. F***ing rail gone. They've done loads and loads of school. It's just different.
I didn't realise this. I never really heard a huge amount about him over the years. He was always kind of quiet. He wasn't like one of these diva wide receivers who always spoke up and had to be talked about and made everything about him. And so when you hear all the stories afterwards about all the kids' charities he worked with and all the time he spent with kids, and I think it was Tyler Columbus who has an incredible photograph, an incredible story of after the Super Bowl, they've won and they're in the bus and there's a massive partying going on, everyone's delighted, and all Demarius Thomas does for the whole bus ride is play with Tyler Columbus's son, and he's sat in his lap and everything and he's just smiling, and you can see that's where he wanted to be. He didn't really want the big limelight of all the big party and all that kind of stuff, and that it was really heartwarming to see. And to be honest with you, like the NFL as a sport, more often than not we have negative stories to talk about, and more often than not we have arrests or stuff like that going on off the field. And even just this week there's a big CTE story with a former Raiders player. So when you do get a story like this, it's really, really nice to have and point to. But if we then talk about him as a player, he was a phenomenal wide receiver. Now everyone goes back to that Tim Tebow play, and personally I hate that Tim Tebow play because it forced us to watch Tim Tebow for a couple of years. But what Demarius Thomas did to Ike Taylor on that play is insane. Ike Taylor was a really good man coverage cornerback. Demarius is coming off injury. It's the start of his career. I think he had a torn ACL initially and then came back late in the year. And he just runs right away from Mike Taylor against Dick LeBeau's defence, leaves Ryan Clark awake in his dust. And he kept doing stuff like that. He got to play with Peyton Manning then. It was him, Emmanuel Sanders at first stage, Eric Decker first stage, Wes Welker was there. And he was always like the linchpin go-to guy. And when you hear Peyton Manning talk about how good he was, you realise that maybe he's a Hall of Fame player. I'm not sure he's definitely an actual Hall of Famer because he's behind the likes of Andre Johnson and Calvin Johnson for me. But the fact that it'll be posthumously now, I think he will actually get in, and I wouldn't complain too much. It's not like Heinz Ward making the Hall of Fame. It's not like it's a guy who doesn't deserve to be there, but it's someone who might get a little bit of a bump just because of what's happened.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, police haven't necessarily specified the issue, but Thomas's cousin, Latanya Bossignor, told the Associated Press that his family believe he died of a seizure, and they were notified by police around 9 p.m. local time, I believe, last Friday. So just an utterly tragic thing. And we talk about his life trajectory, and as you said, quite a down-to-earth fella, and you wouldn't have heard all that much from him. But when you look into his backstory, like he was a child, his mother and grandmother were sent to prison on drugs charges, and to maybe drag himself up from those low ebbs and make himself not only a phenomenal player, but by all accounts a phenomenal person also. So just a huge loss. And that Broncos team, were fairly significant in their way. Almost the year before they won the Super Bowl, you remember the unbelievable points tallies they used to put up, and he was a key cog of that. You mentioned some of the names there, and you have Julius Thomas as well, that little tandem. So Peyton Manning has a lot to be thankful for these lads in terms of getting that second Super Bowl ring.
Do you remember week 1 that year? I don't remember what happened in that week 1.
Week 1 of
the Broncos' first year.
Yes.
Yeah, can you remind me?
This is true. This is when the Ravens were demolished by the
I think it was 50 points in the end.
Yeah, well, to be fair, the entire Ravens Super Bowl winning team retired or left the team before that game. But thanks for reminding me of that, Keane. I'd managed to banish that from my memory.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for quick start insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Yeah, you saw a clip there from the snap that was Ronan and Keane. They're going to be looking forward a little bit later today to all of the festive NFL action. The snap is live across the OTB channels from 2 p.m. this afternoon. It is brought to you in association with the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. You can see details on Northwestern Wildcats against the Nebraska Huskers, which is coming up at the Aviva Stadium on August the 22nd of next year. All the information is on collegefootballireland.com. And if you want to get updates on that and all things American football, you can sign up to our newsletter. All you have to do is go to otbsports.com/club gridiron. Now, delighted to say we're joined by former Connacht player Gavin Duffy to look forward to the Interpro game that survives this Sunday, which is Ulster against Connacht on Sunday afternoon. Gavin, how are you getting on?
How you doing, fellas? Are you well?
Yeah, you were covering Connacht for us last week. A pretty credible performance last Sunday in the Champions Cup, away to the Premiership leaders Leicester. Probably a little bit of frustration though. The Connacht were in what felt like a winning position with 30 minutes to go, and then Leicester were able to just arm wrestle it out in the end.
Yeah, I think it was a case of initial kind of disappointment that they didn't get across the line. I think Jack Carty's drop goal when the clock went red, I think gave him a deserved point, but I think they'll look back in the tape and go, there's an opportunity. That's an opportunity that we gave to Leicester. I think their scrum in particular came on top. I think it's on the 50th minute they made a wholesale change to their front row, and off that scrum they won a penalty, kick to the corner. In fairness to Connacht's small defence stood very firm, but ultimately they gave away another penalty, and Leicester had sensed they'd got on top in the scrum department, and then I think there was 3 or 4 penalties. Finlay Beelum was given a yellow card, and ultimately they were awarded a penalty try. So that scrum came about through a bit of ill discipline from Connacht, obviously, but there was other opportunities where Connacht would feel that they should have put Leicester away. They'd gotten to the outside a couple of times, got Tiernan Halloran into a bit of space, and just couldn't quite get that last pass to Alex Wootton on a couple of occasions that would have given Connacht a bit of joy off set piece that they've been very, very good at over the course of the season so far. So they'll feel it on both sides of the ball that they missed opportunities, but then also gave Leicester a leg up into their own 22. And Leicester, in fairness, they're 13 from 13, I think, now at this stage throughout the season. So their game plan, whilst somewhat hard to watch in terms of there's a lot of kicking, a lot of kick chase. They put huge pressure then in terms of line speed, and every ruck you go into, you have to fight hard to get your own ball back, but it's proven very, very effective for Leicester, and certainly they're all on the same page. They know exactly what they're doing, and as I said, it's reaping the reward so far for Borthwick's team.
Next couple of weeks, Connacht's focus now back on the URC, and there are 2 interprovincial games coming up. The trip to Ulster this coming Sunday, and then they've got Munster on the following week. An important period in terms of pushing back up the URC table again. And Connacht have been really good, Gavin, in their recent games against Ulster as a matchup. They've won 3 of the last 4, and probably the best performance the Connacht have put in all season as an overall performance came at the Aviva when they gave away home advantage to play Ulster just before the autumn internationals. And I thought that night at Lansdowne Road, Connacht were excellent when they put Ulster away.
Yeah, they really were. And you lose to 3 out of the last 4. Connacht have won. It was 58 years before they'd won previous to that, particularly up in Ravenhill. I think they won the last 2 out of 4 up in Ravenhill. So it's been quite the swing in fortunes between the 2 provinces. As you mentioned, the last game now was against Ulster in the Aviva, when Connacht decided to move that game up to Dublin. And in many ways, I think Ulster at half-time will feel that they didn't make the most of their opportunities. Similarly, I think to the Leicester game, Connacht will feel at half-time in that game that they gave away far too many penalties to Ulster. Ulster had, I think it was 4 or 5 opportunities inside the Connacht 22 where they had either a line-out or a scrum, and failed to make that count. So I think Ulster at half-time in that game would have felt, as we got to start taking our opportunities, whereas Connacht will feel, as we won't win this game if we keep giving away the penalties. And Connacht's penalties that day were nearly all for offside in the first initial period of the game, because I think they recognise the threat that Ulster bring when they get their tails up and they get quick, fast balls. So Connacht were shooting off the line, but giving away penalties doing that. So I think at half-time, as I mentioned in that game, both teams will feel that they had enough in them to change the flow of the game and to go on and win the game. And ultimately, I think Connacht's discipline cleaned up in the second half. They started getting a little bit more of the ball. I still think, though, at the end of the game, the scoreline flattered Connacht. Two breakaway tries, really, in the last 10 minutes, last 15 minutes, from Dermot Kilgannon from an intercept, and Matt Hansen from a breakdown turnover. Put a bit of gloss on the scoreline for Connacht. So I don't think they'll look back to that game and take massive confidence from it, but I think they'll have found a way, perhaps, that to stifle Ulster's attack with the line speed, but just mindful that they have to stay on side and not give Ulster territory.
We were chatting to Stephen Ferris on Tuesday. He was quick to point out the injuries that Ulster have at the moment, which is unfortunate timing for them going into a busy period too, but he's really happy with their form. He was saying, with the exception of that Connacht game where Dan McFarland was so annoyed with their display after the game, like, they've been in great form since the international break. Like, they've taken down Claremont, they've beaten Leinster, perfect start in the Champions Cup with that win last Friday as well to put them in a great position to qualify. It's a tricky time to go to Belfast to play them given the form that they've been in.
Yeah, it really is. You got to look at the results, right, as you mentioned there. And in particular, the fact that they were away from home against Leinster, away from home against Claremont, two of the hardest places in European or World Rugby to go and get victories. So they're doing something right. That's a fact. They were unbeaten until Connacht got their hands on them up in the Aviva as well. So they've been going really, really well. I think they've a nice style of play as well. They know when to attack. They know when to counter-attack. But similarly then, between John Cooney and Burns at out half, they know when to just put the ball into the corner, and they've been very effective at the 50-20.
Gavin is just frozen for a second. We'll get him back in a second as Kenny watches on and gets the rugby chat here ahead of this week.
I enjoy listening to the rugby chat. I'm always impressed with the quality of analysts that you get on. One of those situations, I'm happy to take it back. So you can see I'm leaning back in this seat here. I've no reason to get involved in the conversation.
Kenny's thinking about his last,
just to sit back and learn.
Like, last bits of Christmas shopping. I'll just sit here and chillax and come back in a second. I think we've got Gavin Duffy back with us again. Gavin, I was going to ask you about some of the ins and outs from Connacht as well, because I was chatting to Andy Friend a few weeks ago before the start of the Champions Cup, and he was really happy with the way some of the contract negotiations have been going. But the big out this summer is going to be Ultan Dillane, who's been such a good player for Connacht, and it looks like he's going to join Ronan O'Gara in La Rochelle to plug some of the gaps that they have for their back row potentially. So we've got used to Ultan Dillane playing second row quite a bit for Connacht and for Ireland, but he does offer that versatility to play in the back row as well for La Rochelle next season.
Yeah, he does, and he's been a huge part of what Connacht have achieved over the last 10 years. Obviously, the highlight winning the Pro 12 as it was in 2015-16. He's been a stalwart now for 10 years, coming to the academy, the young lad, 18 years of age. And I think similar to the Finlay Beelum, Dennis Buckley, Owen Maston, who all become regulars now in this Connacht team, they cut their cloth in the AIL initially. Actually, all of them with Corinthians here in Galway, but they kind of earned their stripes playing AIL Division Rugby and really just buckled down. And anytime they got an opportunity, they just gave it their all. I remember one of the first days coming across Ultan. I think it was a cold Tuesday morning. It used to take me a while to get warmed up into training, but I warmed up fairly quickly that morning. Ultan got the ball. I think it was the first time Ultan was on the pitch in the senior team, and he just ran over the top of me, and I was going, oh my God, who is this fella? Like, he was only a slip of a fella, but since then I think he's grown into his broad shoulders, and he is, I think, everything that has been good about Connacht Rugby over the last 10 years or so. Fellas coming to the academy, taking their opportunity, keeping their head down, and ultimately going on to play for Connacht. And whilst he's going to be a big loss to Connacht, I think over the last couple of years, other fellas have followed in his footsteps, and none more so than Niall Murray, who's just about to break into the team or become more of a regular in the team as well. So Ultan, as he said in his statement, I think he still wants to go out on a high with Connacht over the next 6 months before his departure to La Rochelle. So I look forward to seeing him play, because when he's on song and when he's on form and when he's fully fit, he is a superb rugby player, and he's a great capture for La Rochelle.
you wouldn't begrudge him the move either, given the way the Ireland setup has worked out. Like, it's difficult for him to get into the second row when you've got James Ryan and a line, and Ian Henderson probably is the first choice. And then the back row options, like, everyone knows how well stacked Ireland are in that position. Like, Olsen has been in and around the squad, but the last couple of years has been very difficult for him to get into the Ireland team. So he's not one of those players when the contract is running down who has to think, if I go to France, I'm not going to be selected. Realistically, he probably wasn't going to be part of Andy Friend's plans for the World Cup anyway.
Yeah, I think he burst onto the scene against England and Twickenham, and I think it was the last 50 minutes of the game, and made one huge carry and a couple of big hits, and he kind of thought, wow, this fella's going to be around on the Irish side for a lot longer and a long time to come. But that position, as you mentioned, has been stacked with big names: Ian Henderson, Devon Toner before that as well, if you remember, and Quinn Rue, and himself and Quinn Rue formed a formidable partnership in Connacht Rugby. So it's just been a really strong position for Connacht for Irish rugby over the last couple of years. And I think, ultimately, by looking at it, going, do I stay push in for a World Cup squad place, or to go off and experience something different? And you got to say, that attraction, I suppose, of having Ron Nagara there as well, an English-speaking coach, Donncha Ryan, who's leading the forwards down there as well, and how well La Rochelle have gone over the last couple of years. I think, given his French background as well, it's probably an opportunity that he always looked at some stage in the future, and perhaps this is a really good fit for him now.
The good news on the contract front, Phillipe has signed up. Jack Carthy a few weeks ago extended his contract too. They're two of the players that, when the contracts were running down, Connacht would have been really looking to get tied up their long-term future at the sports ground.
Yeah, very much so. I think people would say that your tight head is the foundation of your forward pack, your scrum, and then your 8, 9, 10 are central fulcrum as well to the way the team want to play. And in having Jack Carty tied down and having Finlay Bealin tied down, that's two of the 4 positions that are really important that most teams would target as having really top class players in those positions. So 2 leaders in the squad, 2 contrasting personalities as well. I think Finlay's is certainly a huge character within the squad. Jack perhaps a little bit more influential perhaps in terms of having the right mindset, and I think he stepped up as captain over the last few weeks as well. So 2 great fellas on the field, obviously 2 very important fellas off the field as well to solid the culture that Connacht are continuing to develop.
Well, look, as an expert in the back 3, I can't let you go without asking you about Mac Hansen. Have you been just delighted with the way that he's hit the ground? Like, to think that in such a short period of time he gets into Irish contention and he's called up into a squad. Like, he's been a real cult hero for fans of Connacht this season too. He's made a great impression since signing. He really has. You look at him and kind of go, oh, this fella's living the dream. He's moved halfway across the world and hit the ground running. He's, as you mentioned, he has become a cult hero. I think it's the white scrum cap as well that makes him stand out. But what I've been really impressed about him was I think that night he scored an unbelievable individual try against the Bulls, where he caught a high ball, bet 2 or 3 defenders, and finished it off from 50 yards. What I've been really impressed about him that night, in particular, was probably one of the first nights I've seen him play, was his basic skills, like catching high balls. A couple of really dirty wet balls went in behind him on the ground. He went down, got them up, picked them up effortlessly. Really strong in contact, made his tackles. Sure, his highlight reel is probably the best in the league at the moment in terms of his tries and his contributions, but his basic skills, I think, is something that I think the Connacht fans have really warmed to. Yeah, I said, we've had players over the years that perhaps had dazzling feet and that they could produce magic moments, but he has just hit the ground running in every department. And then obviously getting called up to the Irish squad, getting a look in there, has probably whetted his appetite for more down the line. So hopefully he gets back to full fitness. He obviously missed the game on Sunday, and I think Connacht missed him for his unpredictability, and I suppose his line break as well. His line breaking ability has been top class. So he's a fella that I look at and kind of go, this fella's living the dream at the moment. And look, that dimension to Connacht's rugby makes them a very difficult team to play against. We saw Bundy Aki's incredible offload last weekend. I think the fact that Jack Carty plays close to the line and is a very good passer of the ball. You've got these very exciting players who Andy Friend has been bringing in to play in the wings and to play at fullback. It gives Connacht a different dimension, because the stereotype always was that you go to play against Connacht, they'll do very well in the pack, they'll kick the ball sensibly at the sports ground, make the most conditions. But Connacht have got a team who can play some really good front foot rugby now. Yeah, they have. I think, what strikes me is every time I see Connacht play,
whether it's against the top URC teams or whether it was against Stade Francais or Leicester, they're never the biggest team physically. And so they have to adapt. You know, and Andy Friend has used his mantra of fast, relentless and adaptable. And I think they've shown that at different times over the season so far. And I think no more so perhaps than against Leicester, where there was a lot of kicking. Connacht ordinarily would counter-attack off that kicking from the opposition. They'd look after the ball, try and get up to the halfway line and then go from there through multiple phases and really fast all-out attack. But they show their adaptability through kicking the ball back into Leicester's half, deep into their 22. And I think what will frustrate Andy Friend perhaps is at the time that they didn't stick to that game plan, where they kind of went back towards their natural inkling to counter-attack. They got caught. They got caught behind the gain line. They got caught isolated and little knock-ons in their own half. So whilst they want to play this fast, relentless game, as you mentioned, and really high tempo, moving the ball away from the breakdowns through Kieran Marmion and Caolan Blade, what a brilliant option to have there, scrum half, whoever they go with. It's that adaptability of playing against the opposition that they're facing and the defence they're facing. So they're playing some really good stuff, but I think they can be quite pragmatic when they need to be as well.
Look, Gavin, enjoy the festive rugby. Thanks a million for joining us on OTB AM.
All the best. Have a good Christmas.
See, Kenny, that's one of the ones I really look forward to. I always usually go to Connacht's home game over the festive period. You sound like these important things you do around Christmas. So when I'm back home, we're about 50 minutes away from Galway City. No traffic around this time of year to go into the city itself. I always enjoy going across. You'll need to wear about 4 jackets and 16 layers in the sports ground this time of year. But to just go across, go with your mates, watch a game, maybe meet up for a few drinks afterwards. That's one of the things I really enjoy with this time of year is actually sport at Christmas.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and live sport. You're right. It's just live sport, isn't it? You know, we all have our. I'm big into me football and whatever it is, rugby, the GA, whatever it is. I mean, even that Formula 1 you mentioned. Now we haven't got time to speak. I haven't watched Formula 1 for years.
Did you get back into it this year?
Well, that was unbelievable. I switched out. I heard it. Channel 4 is showing it live. I was in the house and I flicked it on. Watched the start. After about 6 late laps, I thought, good luck, I'm off here. You know, this is the reason why I stopped watching motor racing 8 years ago. Hamilton's away, bish bash bosh. For some reason, I went back in there and switched it on about an hour and a half later, wherever it was, and the safety car's on the track. I'm thinking, what's going on here? This is interesting. And all but the next 10-15 minutes was just is incredible.
It was like something
I couldn't sit down. I couldn't sit on the sofa. I was literally walking around the sitting room.
You couldn't script that last lap. To have it genuinely set up is Verstappen's got a bit of ground to make, but now he's got the better tyres because they've taken the risk and they've been a little bit brave in Red Bull. Hamilton might just be able to hold on despite the fact that he's at a disadvantage. He's got that bit of a lead. Probably both teams are annoyed about whether the safety car is going to stay for the rest of the race. You get a race director who just goes, go on, have one lap, see who's world champion.
And then when it all came together and was raced and just kind of realising, oh my God, this is it, one lap, winner or bust. And the end, even looking, I'm saying not great to be watching on the sofa, but to be inside that auditorium that day, you could sense it, you could feel it. Everybody in the stadium thinking, oh my God, it's happened. It's actually happened. It's come down to this one lap, and whoosh, everybody invested in it. And then just the next, whatever it was a minute and a half, whatever it took them to go around. It
was crazy. Once they hit that turn number 5, and once Verstappen saw in the slipstream he had a chance to go around, it's part of me thinking, is Hamilton going to take him out? Is he going to actually get space to go around?
Back on him, didn't he? Came back immediately after him for a split second there. You thought he was going to retake him. I mean, that's
unbelievable. And for potentially, and there was so much on the line. Hamilton could be 8-time, go past Schumacher. Verstappen could win his first title. Looked like he'd maybe let the title race slip. Unbelievable. I'll tell you, I'll have to get you a Netflix account to watch Drive to Survive next year.
Yeah, I'm always open.
This season, genuinely, it's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, but it just goes to show you sport how important it is. Like we've said it before, and it's a bit cliche the last couple of years, but in particular the last few years, how important it is in terms of the release for people. You know what I mean? Just to invest yourself totally in something just to actually turbocharge you. Just get the hairs in your
Sport moment of the year for me. Kenny, thanks a million for joining us on the Christmas special. If you missed anything from the show this morning, you can check out our YouTube and also the OTBM podcast feed, where you'll get all the various different sections from our chat. OTBM, of course, is brought to you by Gillette. Good mornings start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Tomorrow morning on OTB AM, we're bringing you our Christmas Mount Rushmore. You can join Ger, Owen, Nathan and Joseph Conroy from 7:30. The football kickoff will be live from 10:30. Shane Hannon and Simon Cox will be along with me for that. But right now we're leaving you with the big football review of 2021 from last night's Off the Ball. It was Phillipe Auclair and Graham Hunter who were in conversation with Joe.
Now, you are most welcome along to a very special football show. It is the season for many things, including reflection, and we're going to do just that with two of the heavyweights of European football journalism, if I do say so. Mr. Phillipe Auclair, you are there. Hello.
Hello, heavyweights. My goodness, yes, I've put on a bit of weight during lockdown. That's absolutely true.
And I'm very happy to say it's been too long since we've spoken on air, various scheduling issues and so on. You've been a big part of OTB AM. It's very nice to have Mr. Graham Hunter back on FM. Hello, Graham.
Bonsoir, Joseph. Bonsoir, Philippe. Yeah, listen, it's good to be here. I'm a great believer that pound for pound, nobody that I've come across anywhere in the world puts out better quality sports radio than Off the Ball. So I'm really, really pleased to join you for this special.
Let's jump in. We have so much to talk about when we chat through 2021. We'll get onto some of the bigger centerpieces, I suppose, in a moment. We'll remember this year, amongst other things, Graham, Barcelona's implosion is one of the things I think most of us will remember in 2021. We had heard rumours and talk of financial mismanagement, and this thing was going to come to an end. And I must say I was sceptical. I thought, well, they'll just keep borrowing. These things never really come to a halt. And here we are, the Barcelona implosion, and maybe a resurrection under Xavi. Your overriding thoughts on what we've seen in the last 12 months there?
Well, I feel privileged because I'm one of the few people they haven't come to ask for a loan. And in all honesty, given my financial state, I would have had to turn them down. So I'm really pleased about that. Do you know, Joe, your introduction's right, except for the fact that they have just kept on borrowing. They're, as we speak, they're in the process of working out when to announce the signing of Ferran Torres. And as we speak, even though they've gone out of the group stages in the Champions League for the first time in 21 years, they've still earned 70 odd million from the Champions League because of the way that your previous status and your historical worth is weighted. Going out in the Champions League group stage is more than the winner was getting 5-6 years ago. So you're right that still the story can't be ignored that they're in 1.4 billion debt. They've been atrociously managed. Recently in a defeat, Piqué was asked, well, what's going on? He said years and years of really bad stewardship. There's a criminal investigation into the departed president, Bartomeu, who controlled the club, ran the club like an absolute muppet. But because of the way that football is, we love the weirdest things in life, and that includes football. He will, history books tell us, be remembered for as a treble-winning president, irrespective of the fact that he made decision after decision which would have qualified him if he were British to be in the current Tory cabinet in Westminster. He's that much of a muppet. So we'll go on to chat about it, I'm certain, but I'll shut up so that you and Philippe can come to your own conclusions about the next big headline. The thing that mattered most about this, because they will wriggle their way, Oliver Twist-wise, out of the debt situation. They've already unearthed, genuinely astonishing teenagers who will make our lives better if we're neutrals, just simply watching them. It's remarkable. And I'm having a whale of a time watching Gavi and Nico and Abde and Araujo. But the biggest casualty for this was the way in which Leo Messi left the club. Maybe we come back to that. But implosion is a euphemism. You are being kind to the Olympic level of mismanagement that the club has withered under for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Well, on Messi leaving, Philippe, that's a point to bring you in. If at the start of the year we said Messi and Ronaldo would both move on, the Ronaldo wouldn't have been a shock, although maybe we mightn't have guessed it would have been Manchester United. So Ronaldo to United, Messi to PSG, two of the big transfers of this year that we're going to remember.
I suppose so, yes. The craziest of summers, it must be said. I don't know if we will remember those transfers quite in the same terms. They're very much stories which are still waiting to be written, to be honest, if you look at the performances, particularly of Leo Messi at PSG. Because with Cristiano Ronaldo, we have a player who did exactly what we thought he would do, which is score loads of goals, as he's done everywhere since he came from Sporting to Manchester United. Whether he's a good influence on the club, on the team, whether he's going to find his role with Raphinha over a period of time, we don't know. The interrogations are more, actually, in fact, at the moment, the real interrogations are more about Leo Messi and his place at Paris Saint-Germain. It's very odd what's happened there. There's been obviously an explosion of interest when he arrived, a feeling that it wasn't quite real, that as well PSG had somehow managed to do the impossible and brought together the three greatest attackers. This is, by the way, this is not me talking about that. This is people in France together in a single team, and an obsession which was, I mean, I'll give you an example of that. For example, I work with a French radio station, and which has got a section reserved for international football on weekends. We would start every single program weekly with a piece about Messi or Neymar, regardless of whether anything had happened concerning them. But that was the level of interest. I'm talking about the national radio here. And they were basically answering a desire from the people in France, or so they thought, to have all the information possible about, I don't know, the kind of car he's driving, how he's feeling, which school his children are going to, all these sort of things. So absolutely huge. And then you've got what happened on the pitch, which is the fact that, as we speak, Lionel Messi has taken part in 10 games in Ligue 1, and he scored 1 goal. And then you have got these, I mean, very strange scenes where people from PSG have to go and from the media explaining that actually it was a really good idea to have him. And PSG is running away with the title, and PSG is in the round of 16 for the Champions League. So we are in complete unreality, and which is not very surprising because we live in an unreal age and an unreal year, an unreal 2 years and an unreal age. But for some reason, these two, the dimension they have defined of football, which is a dimension which is inhabited by people other than us, perhaps, is still, in terms of Paris Saint-Germain, certainly, something which is dominating everything else, which makes no sense when you think about it. And then you got the Ballon d'Or. You could argue about that, and I don't want to go into that argument because, believe me, working for France Football, you can imagine the number of questions I had about that. But in a way, what we're doing right now, we're taking part in the virtualization of football. If you don't mind my saying so, Joe.
No, not at all.
Because, Messi and Ronaldo, we should have exited this era already. I mean, Ronaldo is playing for a club that hasn't won the Premier League for what will soon be 10 years. Well, it's a bit less than that. PSG still hasn't won a single European trophy. And but then again, it is the extraordinary dimension these two players have acquired, which means that this queue, they make us enter another dimension in which we always end up talking about them.
Sure.
But in France, I have to say, it's completely logical, and it's the right thing. If you're talking about the season in France, you have to start with Leo Messi because he dominates absolutely everything. That and the violence in the stadiums, of course, which we might have a word about in a second.
Yeah, let's do that. Another aspect of modern football, Graham, what does, and the answer here may be not very much, but what does the Saudi takeover at Newcastle tell us about football in 2021?
That it's ill-prepared for things that aren't new. There have been a variety of takeovers whereby, particularly in England, I'd argue, but not exclusively in England, whereby the changes seem to be out of touch with what the majority of paying customers want. Or at least they have highlighted that there's not many more criteria than money talks. While that's been happening, and while there's been a big debate about the adulteration of the competition, which is something that introduced eventually financial fair play, which introduced Wenger's famous phrase about financial doping. He may not have been the first ever to use it, but his use of that phrase has been the most pungent. Nothing's been done. I personally find this issue and the issue of where the next World Cup's going to be hosted confusing, because in principle, I see no main reason why, if it's done legally and the owners of Newcastle want to sell to a Saudi Arabian entity, you may personally think that that's out of touch, or you may be more virulent and say it's against your personal taste. Where we are now is that there is a clear relation between the purchasing entity and people in the regime who murder a journalist for having opposed views to that regime. Then this, not only should that murder have been taken to task in the international court, and should there be serious punishment for those who murdered a journalist for doing his job and did so in a foreign state, then those people associated with that cabal or that regime shouldn't be buying a sports entity, never mind whether it's Newcastle or whether it's the Miami Dolphins. And what it tells me, at least you asked me, is that football in England is really ill prepared to say, here are our lines in the sand. And there have been many years during which massive transactions, possibly principally starting with Abramovich at Chelsea, whereby very little has been updated, altered, and very few people now seem to care sufficiently to say stop. And I'm disappointed to admit to you, Joe, and to Phillipe and to the listeners, that includes large sections of the Newcastle United fan base, which personally I find bewildering.
Graham mentioned Arsene Wenger there, Phillipe. I will also associate this year with maybe it being the first time where the Biennial World Cup idea seemed like a realistic possibility, as Graham Hunter shakes his head in disgust, I think. And Arsene Wenger is very much leading that charge, Phillipe.
Yep. It's not the easiest of questions for me to answer. I've got an awful lot of respect and admiration and affection, actually, for a man I've known for 30 years. But I have to say, this latest incarnation as the director of, or the head of football development within FIFA, and basically becoming a loudspeaker for the projects, the mad projects of Gianni Infantino, I find that a little bit disappointing coming from a man who's given so much to football. What's happening at the moment is certainly not very edifying, and I don't think that anybody actually comes out of the current discussions with really smelling of roses. Some of them probably smell of this morning's bin, so not very pleasant, but not very nice, but not too bad. Others do smell of what you can imagine I was going to say. It's absolutely extraordinary what is going on, because we might have a vote from the General Assembly of FIFA on the Biennial World Cup within a few weeks, when absolutely no consultation, no proper consultation has been taking place with anybody. At the moment, it's a ridiculous and really quite tragic, actually, spectacle which is offered by FIFA, not for the first time, but it's getting worse and worse and worse. They're publishing so-called fan studies showing support for this Biennial World Cup, which is, of course, complete poppycock, and I'm polite when I say that. When you talk to fans and to any fans organizations worth this name, everybody's against it. When you talk to FIFPro, they're against it. The clubs are against it. The two biggest confederations in terms of what they represent historically, culturally, footballistically, i.e. UEFA and CONMEBOL, are against it. In fact, everybody's against it apart from Gianni Infantino and the people whom Gianni Infantino employs or controls, and I included in that people like Peter Schmeichel, for example, the so-called FIFA legends, who are wheeled out to give their assent to this crazy plan, and somebody like Arsene Wenger, who would have been in most people's minds the perfect example of a football romantic, but here, who is actually espousing the cause not of realism but of greed, and it is very disappointing. Unfortunately, brace yourselves, because what is happening at the moment is a tug of war between some very, very powerful people. On one hand, as I said, UEFA, CONMEBOL, FIFPro, ECA, most fans organizations. On the other, FIFA and its allies, and its stooges and its flunkies. So this is what we've got at the moment. This is, unfortunately, the situation of football. Football governance is absolutely... it needs a complete overhaul from top to bottom. And this actually, is completely joining with what Graham was saying a minute ago, about the takeover of Newcastle and the fact that there are no safeguards in place, that English football, like other footballs, but English football in particular, is completely forgetting about its mission, I was going to say. What should be its mission? To have to look after the game and to make sure we have the right people within the game. But no, they're getting those dictatorships in. They're allowing very, very dubious gambling companies to advertise and sponsor those clubs. They have become a vehicle for cryptocurrency and NFTs. The state of football is shocking. And it's a phrase I've used this year more often I've used it too often perhaps, but I've said, if I didn't love football, I'd effing hate it.
Joe, I know that we're tight for time, so you'll want to move each section on, but I have to pick up on what Philippe's saying, and I have to pick up on your question. It's a very Trumpian thing, this, because this Biennial World Cup, they're lying to us, and they know that they can lie without consequence. This idea that was most sort of noticeably peddled by Florentino Perez about the Super League. Unless we make games shorter, or 4 periods of 20 minutes, or unless we have more elite clubs playing elite clubs all the time, the young people are stopping watching. That's bullshit. Certainly, sections of the population are being priced out of watching live football on television, because it's now very hard to find free-to-air top-level football. That is an element. You will find sections of society saying, well, I can't either get into my big local club, I can't afford the tickets, or it's full, or COVID is preventing me. And smaller, lower league football we'll leave aside. That's not our key question at the moment. The public is not falling out of love with football. We're feeding their appetite. It may be monosodium glutamate stuff rather than, fine dining. But Infantino picked that phrase up in the most recent meeting about the World Cup every 2 summers, and said, well, we have to do something to keep the young people involved. That is a lie, an outright lie. It's about nothing other than money. And they can sit there and tell us things that we all know is not true. There'll be no consequence for those lies. And the second point I have to make is, we are going down the road. I think you didn't express your view, Joe, so sorry, I shouldn't drag you into this, but I suspect, knowing you, Phillipe and I expressed a disgust for the way in which that Saudi regime was allowed unchecked to buy Newcastle, and the way in which certain sections of their fan base who aren't dressed up in Arab gear and saying we don't care, and who are the ones who aren't chanting at Manchester City, we're richer than you. Certain sections will be disgusted, but nobody cares about fans. Well, the group about which nobody cares whatsoever, it feels to me, is the players. Elite players do not need another big tournament every second summer. And they almost, Inigo Martinez started a pattern, I believe, which is not unheard of. Bernd Schuster was one, George Best was another. But Inigo Martinez said, I'm not going to this tournament. Yes, I know I'm needed. Yes, I know I was selected. I'm not in physical and mental shape to go to this tournament. He's been slotted straight back in by Spain. They desperately needed a centre-half. They were experimenting all throughout the tournament. But Inigo Martinez said, look, I'm not in breakdown, but I can't face a summer playing football. That trickle will become a flood. And what's more, without putting you or the programme in danger, there have been a spate of players recently who've had breathing problems. We've asked the players to entertain us and to come back quickly throughout the first pandemic the majority of us have ever known. And we're asking, Real Madrid, and both you, Joe, and Phillipe can quote umpteen examples, but Real Madrid just finished a pattern of 5 games in 15 days. Sevilla, Athletic Bilbao, Real Sociedad, Inter, and Atletico, 5 games in 16 days. Now, that's a repeat pattern. It happened to be those were extraordinarily testing games. And the instant that's finished, the 2-0 with Cadiz, they've got an 11-man injury list for tonight's game. That's San Mames, some of which COVID, some of which injuries. In general, nobody gives a stuff about the well-being of the players. And I differentiate well-being for how physically brilliantly toned. We live in an era which I think I'm the oldest, or equal oldest to the three of us, Philippe. But when I was growing up, footballers were, a stone overweight in the summer, and then go back into trim. We're living in the era of perma-fit footballers. They are almost all, the elite ones, perma-fit. In their downtime, they're fitter than the pros that we saw in the 70s. Not as hardy, but fitter. Yet we're having no discussion about the wear and tear on them internally and mentally. And now there's Infantino, the liar. And I can't better Philippe's words about the Stooges, including Wenger, which is so disappointing, telling us lies about what they think it's right for the game to do, which will involve the very players who need a rest mentally and physically. It's disgusting.
Okay. I will say, and it's important to say, Gianni Infantino and Arsene Wenger would absolutely say they're acting in the best interest of the game, but this is a matter of...
Send them round here then, Joe. Send them round here and I'll put them right. See what they say after they've been round my manor.
Go round to the Hunters for Christmas. Take you up on that offer. Just to lift the mood for a moment. I mean, this is a hell of a lead into Christmas, isn't it? Before we take a short break, because we haven't touched on European Super League or the Euros yet, for instance. We asked each of you to pick a highlight. Phillipe, I'll let you take us into the ad break. Give us a highlight from the 2021 footballing year for you.
It was a defeat of my team, and my team is Arsenal, as I think most people know. Most people who know me would know. But it was the first time I'd been able to support my team in the stadium. So that was the 2-0 defeat against Chelsea. Going back to the stadium, using the tube to go there, going past the same gardens, the same park, meeting my friends in the same restaurant where we always go before the games, and then be miserable but together in the pub afterwards. It was a beautiful day. It also made you realize how much you could miss real football, the proper football. And so yes, when football started again, that was brilliant.
There's the perfect definition of international football throughout its entire, of football being miserable together.
Listen, it sounds like this particular slot right now. We're going to take a very short ad break. You can watch every live Premier League game this Christmas on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We are back with Graham Hunter and Philippe Auclair in just a moment.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved